Let's call this meeting to order at 6:01. Do a roll call.
Hewitt. Present. Carlson. Here. Cristaldi.
Here.
Shanahan. Cohen.
Here.
Mara.
Here.
Kurt.
Here.
Shapiro.
Here.
Creighton.
Here.
Benson.
Here.
Greco.
Here.
Shanahan is here. Sorry, I was on mute.
Thank you, and now we'll take public comment, 3 minutes max. Questions, please?
Good evening, my name is Stephanie Moyer. They were passing mom.
Thank you.
I'm sitting back here. Okay, good evening, Stephanie Moyer. I wanted to talk for a few minutes tonight about pay for city council. One of the most painful things I've ever done as a civic advocate is to advocate for city council to get a raise. When I started doing this, they were making about $50,000 a year. We had city councilmen who were bullying people into letting them into meetings. We had city councilmen who, had issues with paying for things. So, this list that I've given you is a list for FY26, so this year's budget, of the top salaries within the city for each department. This is a beautiful spreadsheet with each department. I've done this since 2023. As you can see, staff is making significantly more than council. Well, of course, they'll say, oh, but council works part-time. Well, guess what? It's not really a part-time job if you're doing it right. We've had a couple of people who did a half-time job. But honestly, even if they're, bottom line is, the top number on the top that I handwrote on there is $77,447 a year. And if you take all of those big fat numbers at the top and you divide them in half, it's significantly more than that $77,000 a year. So what we have, and part of the problem is, people can, when we were making $54,000 a year, people could not pay their mortgage with their city council pay. And if we want people who are going to work hard and do a good job, they need to be able to have a decent salary. I'm not talking about an exorbitant salary. Currently, at the $77,000 mark, we are at 40% of what the mayor makes. It should be in the charter that those raises are automatically tied to somebody else, whether they're tied. I think there was discussion about tying it to the ADU. There was discussion about tying it to the mayor's salary. This is currently 40%. You think 50% is more what it should be. But city council should not be in charge of their own raises. It's unfair to them. It took 4 votes before they finally voted to increase that salary. And it was headlines in the paper. Oh my gosh, they've given themselves a $20,000 a year raise. When everybody who doesn't have a second job qualifies for affordable housing based on that salary. That's not right. We should pay our officials a living wage. I mean, even at 75, 77,000 is still on the edge. And it's not an outrageous sum. I'm just asking for you to look at those numbers in the 2026 column and say, oh, this is what all of our top staff is making. Why would city council not get the same respect? And why is it left on them to make the decision? And I'm going to be honest with you, 3 years ago, when there was a millage increase on the agenda, there was only one person in the entire city of Tampa who got less than a 3% raise if the millage increase had not taken place. That person was a city council attorney, and when I confronted the mayor with it, with all this data, she said, that person only works part-time. Now, you tell me why we've spent so much time worrying ourselves into a tizzy in these meetings about our city council attorneys. That right there is a really good reminder of why he works for those 7 people, which personally, I would never want to have to work for all 7 of those people at the same time. That would be enough to make me crazy, but God bless him, does. So I just wanted you guys to have the information about what city council is making now, what they were making up to about 4 years ago. And honestly, Councilwoman Henderson really, really pushed to make that happen. Because she was making less money here than she did as a school teacher. Ridiculous. Y'all have a good evening.
Thank you. Any other, anyone else signed up for public comment?
Any other public comment? Thank you. So I move to approve the prior meeting minutes from March 10th.
Starting for. I think it was the 24th. Was that? Oh, amended.
Okay, April 24th, sorry, March 24th?
So we accepted the minutes as amended for the 10th last time, I think.
Gotcha.
But it was in the 24th for today.
Okay, and those, I don't have to sign them. Right, okay, so March, I moved to approve the minutes from the previous meeting, March 24th, 2026.
So moved.
Second,
Second.
discussion. Right, so, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Right, it's been moved and properly seconded. Approve the minutes from March 24th, 2026.
Good to see everyone again. We have a little bit more time this time because of the way the calendar worked. I'm lucky, I don't think anyone showed up last Tuesday, so that's good. I wanted to zero in on our objectives for today. After the last meeting, I really challenged myself to figure out how to make it really easy for all of you to know where we are, but also to access the many materials the city attorneys are giving to us. This is a summary I emailed that I thought we would summarize here. So with your help, keep us moving. Ideally, it would be nice to complete our review of Article 2, 4, and 5. These are the ones that we started on and then we're pausing for when we're waiting for information. And in almost every case, that information has either been obtained or the city council chair coming today, someone showed up that we've asked for. As a result, I won't read all of this, but essentially this is a chronicling of the status of literally every one of those items. In cases where we've done charter modifications, I actually have slides for that, so we don't have to go digging through. I'll show you the changes Karen's made, so you can see those relatively minor changes. You can also link to everything that's in the actual reference material. So the point is, with a little luck, we get through this, then we're all caught up. Next time we can go to Article 6 and keep everything fresh, because we've been challenged by that, and I appreciate that feedback. This is a snippet from the working document you're familiar with, and presuming that everyone had a chance to go into this document, what I did here is just link to every single thing that you guys asked for. So you didn't have to go find it, you don't have to go hunt for it. And essentially it gives you, it's one click away for the things that you requested. I haven't summarized what's in these here because they could be lengthy, but in some cases I have, if it had to do with more of a clear answer. So this is updated, it will continue to be updated, and I'm hoping that helps you quickly zero in on our status and also help you prepare for our sessions. What we're going to do though today, because we have Mr. Clendenin here as our city council chair, we're going to start with 2.04, even though we had some questions on some preceding items, because that's where your request for the chair to come came to be in connection with our conversations around the two attorneys. So that doesn't mean that would be the only thing the chair will answer, and I'm sure he's expecting more than that. We'll start on 204, then we're going to go back to 201, push through, and then complete. But I want to get into 2.04 and then immediately ask the chair to come up. Just a second. Any questions on where we're headed for today? Okay, great. Pivot over to this one here. This is all section 2. I'm moving Kathleen. So we will come back to this with updates on a number of items you requested. But when we get to 2.04, which is here, if you remember, we had the city attorney come to speak. We had a response from Martin Shelby about why he couldn't, and then the request was for the city council chair to attend, which he has, thank you. I'm going to pass the floor over to you, sir. This is a chance for us to ask more about the relative attorney's roles or really anything while we have him. So thank you for coming.
Absolutely. One, thank you for inviting me. It is not an imposition. I know some of y'all are worried about that. As a matter of fact, I'll preface this with, for my opinion, as we created this, I would kind of expect you guys to reach out to any subject matter experts on any of the issues that you're dealing with to get the highest and best information that you can get from, anybody. If it's other 6 of my other colleagues or city staff or the mayor, whoever you feel like you need information from, I would encourage you. Because obviously the work that you're doing is consequential and you want to be able to get input from as many people as you can, along with, subject matter experts and people doing research, even other jurisdictions as you do your own research all around the state, finding out what other municipalities are doing, what their bodies look like and what their authorities look like. I think it would all be very helpful in the work that you're doing. I know you'd asked me to come down to speak specifically about the one topic, but feel free to ask me about anything. I'm here speaking more. I'm not really here speaking as city, the chair of the Campus City Council, although that's the position that I occupy. See, I'm here talking about one of 7 people on City Council. I happen to be involved in a lot of things because of the position of being chair, including hiring these 2 fine gentlemen. I hope you're satisfied with the hire of your attorney and your facilitator. We're very involved in that process, and of course, the creation of your documents. I will say this because I know there was a lot of stuff that happened in the beginning of this. And I know there was memos going back and forth, politics going back and forth between the executive branch and the legislative branch. I just want to know part of what the intent was when myself and Mark Shelby and a few of us put together this process, Hager Pesky, and put together the documents that we presented to council for passage, was we wanted to shed you all the responsibility of the dotting the I and crossing the T's and the administrative kind of stuff. We wanted you guys to be able to have the framework of just delving right into the work of looking at the charters. We tried to, at least that's how we conceive this, is, wash y'all's hands of the administrative stuff so that you could just dive into the, heck with trying to skin it. It was already skinned, just dive into these. So that was the whole purpose of the things. And the one memo that Mr. Cristaldi said was very interesting, that I submitted, that did come from me, by the way. That was a memo sent by me. But I want you to know that most of that was, because this is maybe the air traffic, I didn't want to have it back and forth. I just wanted to be one time and we're done with it. Because, as you can see, especially when you're dealing with personalities and politics, sometimes you end up with a tennis match. Balls going back and forth across the net. I wanted to avoid that at all costs. I just wanted one-way communication to be done with it. So anyway, since this is the first time I've been able to talk to you guys as a group, I wanted to get that out of the way. And like I said, anything you guys want to talk about, if you want to start, I can kick off and talk about city council attorneys and pitch it, or you want to ask questions, however you guys want to do it. What do you think?
I think an overview of your outlook on the city council, city attorney, that's something
Right.
we have a perception looking in, but you all deal with it and what's Marty's role and rely on and just kind of walk us through that.
It's interesting because I've only been on council now for a few years. And a lot of the establishment, of course, was created multiple years prior to my arrival. And I've been involved enough, or at least observed city council enough to have a dangerous amount of information until I got in the actual city and the seat. What I've seen and my feeling about city council attorney has evolved and matured since I've been there, and especially since being chair. It really has crystallized a lot more than even just as a member of city council, which is my interaction. As much, I've talked to Marty how many times today. It's a constant two-way communication. I talk about just about everything, and I clear just about everything through him in a legal way. So I can't understate the accessibility portion of that. Having a city council attorney that is accessible to city council as we're dealing with issues. Having only city council as that person's client and that attorney-client relationship, I think is also vitally important, because as you know, all of our other attorneys, their roles are much broader and their responsibilities are much broader. Mari's responsibility is to his 7 members of Tampa City Council and building relationships, relationships with other folks in the city staff. But his attorney responsibility is just to the 7 of us. And that is it's a privilege to be able to have that ability as a member of Tampa City Council to speak to an attorney that I know I have that for lack of a better word, attorney-client privilege. So I can speak with them without having to worry that somebody has a different interest or has to report to someone else, an employee-employer relationship. So like I have a great I had a really good relationship with very good with our prior city attorney, because her and I have been friends for years. And then, of course, when I became city council, you know, that good relationship transferred through. And now with Scott, I built, and I knew him before, but I'm getting to know him better, and I've got a good relationship with Sam as well. But I also know our relationships are built on roles. You know, he has a role to play, I have a role to play, and his role to play is different than our city council attorney. So I think that was part of it, and I think we on council, we recognize that relationship we have with the city council attorney, and how privileged that is to be able to have somebody that's just dedicated to us. Especially as we're drafting documents, or we're looking at documents, or we're looking at legal opinions on things. You know, I to be able to have that accessibility is important. That's my role. Anything specific about it?
I just gonna say, I feel like, it started with a question of, this is a little bit unique, and getting some more information on it. And I feel like we got a lot more information, and I feel like that answered a lot of our questions. And I feel like there may be some perception that people were questioning whether or not individual members of this committee, certainly the whole committee hasn't spoken, thought it was a good idea for you all to have your own attorney. I never heard that from anyone, but I heard that from outside people. And I think that it was a legitimate question, because it is set up a little bit different. Why is it set up? How does that work? Who answers to whom? And is it working well? And we heard from you, and we heard from the city council, the city attorney, Scott Steady, those saying that the format as it is written is working well. And I don't want to say if anyone else has anything else. I just didn't know if we needed to continue on for hours on this unless anyone had any questions, because I feel like last time we all kind of came to the consensus that we were comfortable.
Just, I'm reporting to, by the way, so Marty, because we need to sync personnel, we have a single point of contact, so Marty, like, if I do a performance review, the chair will be doing the performance review, just like the chair, the CRA, when you get from CRA chair, Hager capacity goes to, she reports to me like I'm in the middle of her performance review. But we all, per charter, you know, as far as hiring and termination, but as far as day-to-day interactions, like if there's an absence, if somebody's not gonna be at work, they go to the chair. So if Marty is not gonna be at work one day and he's in a absence, he calls me and says, hey, I have to run off that, so just so you know.
So I have been locked out of my SharePoint as of this meeting, because I was on it today. But since we had you here, I was wondering if we could quickly run through some of the city council questions, because I felt that I had, and I'm so embarrassed right now that I don't have it at my fingertips, but I think there were a couple other questions that we were like, we want to be responsive to what city council asked us to look at, and we were like, we're not sure where it was going, so we were kind of just ready to move on.
Absolutely, and I wanna clarify, I wanna make sure, because I am just one person, I'll try to capture what I feel is the intent, but know that I'm also human, I may be tainting this from my perspective, but I'll try to capture what I believe the city council's intent.
Becca, do you know which ones you were thinking of?
I mean, if you
Because I can.
and I'm sorry if anyone else has one that they knew right
Well,
off the top of their
yeah,
head.
but it's another-
Start with those.
Should we start
with those two?
Yeah, sure, and I'm not trying to run the meeting either, I didn't want you to leave when you said at the last meeting. Okay,
In some cases, the questions didn't have context, so we don't really know if there's an issue or if it's just a.
Yeah, I'm speaking. So this issue is about hiring outside staff, and it's nothing that has occurred since I've been chair of city council, but with past, for lack of better word, dramas in the past, where there's been incidents that required lots of additional workload. The council members felt that that we needed the ability for the city council to be able to staff up per the issue. Not necessarily maybe full-time staff, but let's say that there was an investigation and our, previous city council members, had issues that were happening. And we didn't have the ability to do that. So having the flexibility per issue to be able to bring on staff, or if there was something, I mean, honestly, even almost, this is one thing I want to leave to with y'all. the city of Tampa is not the same city of Tampa was 10 years ago. I mean, everybody that drives on the roads knows that. This thing, our budgets are exploding, every year, everything is bigger, everything is much more complicated. So what the city council was established, X number of years ago, it's not the same world we're living in today. Everything is so much more complex. Nothing is easy anymore. All the easy things have been done. Everything we do is hard now. Every single thing we do is hard. So, these types of issues, I don't know what will come up, these is unanticipated, maybe, issues as far as what I am, my understanding. And can we have the ability, the flexibility when needed to be able to staff up if we have to be able to do that? I think is what the intent is.
So Chairman, on that point, is there a prohibition from hiring, for instance, outside counsel to help with an issue or?
Well, you get into the midterm budget amendment, so the city council has 100% authority over the budget one time and one time only. So we pass the budget, and now unless we pad the budget, which nobody, when you do a budget, you don't want to unrealistically throw money, because we run on tight, right? We don't have excess money to throw in on a budget for the what ifs and then roll it over the year. I don't want to be doing that because we need to pay for damn roads. But without the ability to have a midterm budget cycle and then initiated by city council, we wouldn't have the ability to do that. Hypothetically, not throw politics in it, but let's just say there was a conflict between us and the administration, and the administration did not want us to do that because we were investigating something that the administration was doing. They would say no, and then we have no opportunity to do it. You can't hire an extra, you couldn't hire somebody, you couldn't hire, so if we had the ability to do a midterm budget amendment with like 5 votes or supermajority or something like that, maybe, and I honestly, I'm not vetted that, I don't know if that's a solution, I don't know if it's even a viable solution. I'm just saying that that's maybe. But that's the problem, that's maybe an option, I don't know. We've a lot of the stuff, we kind of look to you guys to do the research and find the subject matter experts and do the comparisons to other municipalities, like how do they do this? Or if there's precedent by somebody else, maybe we're depending on you guys to do that because we're doing other stuff. Yeah, I think Stephanie Pointer talked about this, I agree. This was it's not a hard lift for me because I'm in a situation that it's not a big deal for me, but for other council persons, the salary situation I think was dire. I mean, it was silly. It's still kind of, it's like, I think that there should be some way to set it that it is automatically incrementally increased. I don't know if that's the mayor, if it's AMI, if it's what, some index, if you set the salary at a certain rate today and then indexed it with, with an index or, I think something like that. So you take the politics out of it and you take the personality out of it and you take, so that it's not weaponized, because we've seen this been weaponized in the past. Yep. So I think I think that would be beneficial for folks. What else you got here? Oh,
I'm just gonna go up here and check. Make sure we're good from.
Hey, Rob.
Yes.
Should we allow Chairman Clinton to go through all the questions or all those responses to the questions and then ask ours at the end, or is it okay kind of pepper them in as we get?
Maybe as we go, just while we're on topic.
Yeah, I have a question about the previous section. It's more so, I guess, an interpretation question, but I thought it was a little, in reading the charter, I think it's odd that everything is about the city, since the cities, but there's a specific reference to from the city council's budget when it comes to adding staff, and I'm just curious how does that?
Because we get one bite of the apple, so we set the city council budget at the beginning of the fiscal year. And then that's our budget, we manage that budget. So if there are certain things, like we actually went today, by the way, she manages our city council budget for us, so she gives me reports and all she really does is give me bills that I have to sign, that goes against our cost center. But, so why we have to go is, do we have, does it go back with reference to special call meeting, do we have enough money to pay for the special call meeting? And that's, we didn't budget for that, but if we're under budget somewhere else, I can shift things. I'm not out, I would say we have a city council budget, it's not so hard that I have to pay for only this, only pencils out of that. It's more flexible. So when it says city council budget, whatever we pass at the beginning of the fiscal year, that's all I've got. Anything else, I don't have the access. I can't initiate a budget amendment to get any other additional money. It has to be initiated by the administration. I can't do that. So even as city council chair, even if I feel like there's a need, there's no ability within the charter right now for me to initiate a midterm budget.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, that's why that, I'm looking at the actual charter language as well as, that's why that. Sure, there's a story behind it, but I think it's a little bit disingenuous to say you can hire an entire new FTE as long as you can fund it within the existing $2.7 million budget right now for 17 people. Like, there's just not extra money hanging around to hire.
We don't budget that way.
That's less than 0.1% of the overall city's budget, so it's not like, I could understand if it said funds must be found within the city's budget, but within city council's budget, I just don't see that as being, it gives the perception that it's possible, but the way I read it, I'm looking at the amount of money that's there, it doesn't seem to be.
Yeah, the only way that would work is if we decided to realign it, I took somebody else's salary, the person left, and I took their salary and hired somebody else, maybe, but you're right, because we don't have budgets, because the city runs, every part of the city runs on a budget, and so the city council, we don't have extra money.
I mean, I know because I had a cost center when I worked at the city, and I know that when there's a position that is vacated, when there's two, the money stacks up until you hire a new person. So there are extra funds sometimes available, but a city council staff position probably isn't vacant for an entire year and it's a fund an entire position. So it's just, I find that to be a little disingenuous. And it wasn't the direct question, but it relates to the feasibility of achieving that. So
There's identified the problem, I'll figure out something.
thank you for that.
So, sorry, you go ahead. Council does have the authority according to the charter to hire and fill the staff positions for whatever necessary, as long as you have a 5-vote approval. But the budget has to be approved by the mayor. The mayor also has a say in the.
But okay, the way the chart is, the budget only midterm budget amendments only can originate in the administration. City can't originate. So we only get, city council only gets the budget one time a year, one time only. After we pass a budget, we no longer have control over the budget. That's why you'll see at every one of our agendas, if you pay attention, you'll see the administration, there's on our consent agenda, there's all kinds of like midterm, they're moving money around. So they initiate it, they present it to council passes it or projects it.
But so long as you're filling a staff position for whatever necessary, as long as it's within the council's budget.
The budget doesn't exist unless we padded the budget at the beginning. So we run a lean budget. We don't have the budget. Right. There's not enough money in the city for all, maybe when you start looking at the bigger departments, they have the ability to do that because they may have fill positions that are budgeted and things like that. But for the city council, we're just so small. I don't have the ability. I'm not going in, when I submit the budget, I'm not going in and say, hey, slipping in an extra $200,000, to pay for a business salary, benefits and all that stuff.
That's why I think it's odd that it says within the city council's budget.
Where does it say this?
It says it in the.
Well, that tripped me up, so that's edited, the.
2.4?
2.0.
It's in the last sentence of 2.04. So the city's budget is overall is just shy of $2 billion. The city council cost center budget is 2.7 million. So it's less than about a tenth of a percentage point.
And if I can just read that last sentence. The city council may create and fill other staff positions for the purpose of assisting in the performance of its legislative function. However, such other staff positions must be approved by an affirmative vote of no fewer than 5 members of the city council. Funds for such positions must be, must be found allocated within the city council's budget, and any additional costs thereof must first be approved by the mayor.
Mr. Chair, what yours, I think what I heard you say earlier was, if you want to create a position in the budget cycle, you can create a position. So if you need a deputy city council attorney, you could budget for that, you could create a position for that. You were talking more about kind of emergent circumstances, or emergent might not be the right word, but ad hoc circumstances where you just need to get advice from an outside consultant or something like that.
Or like when we were talking about the attorney staff, like if I wanted to hire a legislative or legal assistant for the attorney during the mid-cycle because there was something happening or needed, that would be, we'd have to anticipate that need, and that may not be apparent until the budget cycle's already ongoing.
Do you have any suggestions in terms of what form it would be that
the city council can tap into funds for unanticipated hires or circumstances. Should there, for instance, be creation of a contingency fund that can only be used for a specific purposes or another matter?
No, I don't, I think that's, sometimes it would have to be smart people, that's where our finance staff probably provide better subject matter expertise on this than I mean, being dumb enough to say stupid things, I would anticipate, let's say, that we had the ability to do a midterm or a mid-cycle budget, that would be, I think, coordinated between council and our financial staff to find out, what cost centers may have extra funds to be able to initiate the transfer of funds from one cost center to another. And so that would have to be through coordination. So I mean, again, money just doesn't linger out there, it's all in different cost centers, so you have to find something that would be. And I did want to say one thing for clarification, reference the money, because there are times like, when a legislative aid is out, we have temporary help. And we are able to absorb some of that within the current cost center of the city council. So we've had temporary help, like when we have maternity aid or a medical emergency or something like that, we've had temporary, we do that. I'm letting him recognize you.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. You guys are so well behaved now.
Scared of the death.
Yeah, so another thing to think about too is, you mentioned the politics, which might come into play here, but the legal department is supposed to be equally representative of the city council as it is of the administration, specifically the city attorney is the attorney for both the council and the city is a municipal corporation. Were there to be, if there were some emergent issue that the council wished to address, and maybe I need some help here, but would there be an avenue to address that through the legal department if it was not in the interest of someone in the administration who averse to what you're trying to achieve?
That's $20,000 question. And some of it is one thing, and some of it is history, some of the things that have predated my experience on council. So there's never going to be, I'm sure there's never going to be a perfect solution. Because we do have a city attorney that does a municipal corporation, which is all of us. Is there some inherent bias there? And also you have a chain of command issue where you have one person's hired and fired by the mayor, with people hired from the city council, and that could be removed. I can hear lots of different speculation on that. It is a problem. What the solution is, I'm not sure. Again, I was kind of dependent on you guys. It can identify that. Has there been problems in the past? Yes. Is it systemic? Is it something we have to deal with every day? No. Is it something I've dealt with since I've been on council? No. Do I know for a fact it has been a problem in the past? Yes. Just like, this kind of broaches into the other subject of when there is an inherent disagreement, between the legislative branch and the executive branch. Somewhere where we have it, and with the Congress and the White House, they have Supreme Court, we don't have Supreme Court. So we do not have a mechanism within the charter to arbitrate disagreements. And I think that's one of the questions that we to toss to you guys.
Yeah.
What does that look like? Is that hiring an independent, like a third party person to come in? I think we've gone up to that line maybe twice since I've been on council, but we never reached, pull back from it. Or, but I know it's happened in the past as well, because we've kind of got something built into the charter right now that doesn't have a solution. So it just hangs out there. It's a difficult situation, and it creates, in some ways, it creates unnecessary tension between the council and the administration, because you end up in that situation, who's gonna blink first, who's gonna push harder, who's gonna be pulling this way, who's gonna be pulling that way. And it creates tension because everybody's running up to that line, it's like, but then there's no mechanism to fix it, and everybody knows there's no mechanism to fix it. So there's like this inherent kind of like uncomfortableness.
Let Kathleen ask, thank you, her hand's raised. Kathleen, go ahead.
Hi, Kathleen.
Let her know she's on mute.
Yeah, you're muted, Kathleen.
Trying to find it.
I know I was muted by the city. Anyway, thank you for calling on me. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for coming. I really do appreciate your opening comments. I just have a couple sort of questions that we sort of have talked about. We really haven't resolved. Like you raised, that Tampa now is not the same Tampa as it was 10 years ago. So it's growing. So how do we think about changing the size of the city council? Do you have any thoughts around that? And then I'd be curious as to your comments on, at least the way that I don't live in the city. I mean, I live in the city, but I don't live in negotiating with anybody at the city or the administration. So I sort of view it as the administration is the executive branch and the city council is the legislative body. And if that's just too simple, I'd love to hear what you have to say about that. And then lastly, on this whole zoning thing that's going on, I mean, is there a different structure than you currently are using for a zoning decision-making that would be helpful to the city council? So those are my 3 questions. Sorry to pile them all out
Repeat
there.
the last question, I missed that.
It's just on the zoning discussion. I know that there's been, and I'm not talking about any specific topic, but I know there's been a lot of focus on zoning approval and the process that you all go through. And I'm just curious if the charter makes it easy for you on zoning, or if there are things that we should think about adjusting from a zoning approval process that would be helpful to the city council.
Okay, so I'm gonna answer on the size of council, this is gonna be Alan's answer, not council's answer.
Okay.
Alan's answer on that is the fiscal implications of expanding council right now are probably too burdensome for the reward. So it would be too costly to expand for a couple of different reasons. One, our current council chambers is not big enough to accommodate any of the parties we have right now. We just don't have the building, we don't have the physical facilities to be able to accommodate a bigger city council. On top of that, adding councils, adding staff, it just starts snowballing. I don't necessarily know that the workload, we're less than 420 something thousand people in the city of Tampa and I think the composition of our council is good, 4 single member districts and 3 citywide, which gives you the 3 citywide with a citywide perspective and 4 single member district. Some of the concerns, and I have that concern as well, and I have the same concern on the county commission when they're having the same kind of discussion. Because we talk about representation in government so that our council looks like the city of Tampa. And I think some of the concern was how do we protect our minority population so that they're always reflected in council. I think right now, when you look at the breakdown, we're already a minority. District 5 has traditionally been a minority district. It's minority. But that being said, I think that I don't necessarily know that if you divide that population even more, it may actually be more harmful because you end up separating that population into a couple of different districts, and then you could actually jeopardize the election of minorities in that district if you end up dividing it by, because we're mandated by law to divide our districts by population numbers, not minority. In fact, we're prohibited technically from doing it by any other type of ability. So I would be very cautious just on the fiscal responsibility of currently, and the next generation of this group will be meeting basically tomorrow. By the time you guys wrap your day. So this is good, and how the city's growing and the reality is different. Hopefully we'll have different council chambers by then. The next group that sits at this table, I think will have a bite at this apple and they can revisit that next time around. But I think right now, this is Alan, I'm not speaking for all my 6 coworkers, they may have a different opinion on this. But for me right now, I'd probably defer that decision to the next charter review commission on that one. I remember the last question because I asked twice. So zoning works fine. Most of that is done mostly through legislative empowerment, and I believe probably some of which are alluding to some of the court decisions that are made. But right now, we're business as usual. So how we're doing zoning with the charter, I don't think we have any issues in the charter with that. I think everything's fine. And having the city council, from a citizen perspective, having zoning in the hands of your city council folks gives it to the lowest level of government so that people can come into and talk about how their city is laid out and what the future land use is and what the zoning of their neighborhoods are, and gives them the ability to appeal to their government at the most accessible level. So I wouldn't monkey with that at all, to be honest with you. And even though it's the most difficult part of the job, and it's the part of the job that I knew the least about when I got into this, but I was a fast learner. But it's probably one of the most consequential for people who live here. And we had a third question, I'm sorry, Kathleen, what was the third?
Let's see, where are my notes? It was, one was on the zoning, one was on the size of the council, and the other one was, I can't remember what the third area was, I'm sorry.
The question about the legislative versus the executive.
Oh, yeah, yeah, thank you.
No, I 100%, and that function works because, you know, we have a legislative function and executive branch of government running out. I don't think, nowhere in the world would it be efficient for 7 people to manage the operations, the day-to-day operations of the city. That's just not practical. You know, it just doesn't work. I think I think there's a couple of conflicts, and that is one, we don't have a judicial branch, so there's no way to appeal to another authority to break the ties if there's a fundamental disagreement. So if we had a mechanism to do that, I think that would resolve a lot of the conflict. And I think that there's probably some other inherent conflict that, I mean, it can work out. And I think that I don't necessarily think that system's hopelessly broken. I think that system works. I think, again, 7 people can't run the day-to-day operation of the city. I mean, it's just, you know, I think the only time that you do, it's interesting because, you know, Orlando, the mayor of lots of cities, the mayor sits on council. Some of them are non-voting, some of them are voting. That, in some ways, I can actually see the benefit of that. Don't hate me over there, but that actually brings that person into the room and is part of the conversation for council meetings. But because and maybe create more of a sense of team or, you know, camaraderie, having you're all part of that same group. But I mean, in fact, I think maybe the majority of council cities do that, where the mayor actually sits on. I know St. Petersburg does, Orlando does, but that's, you know, neither here nor there for me. It's not a big personal line for me. So legislative and executive work, we just need a way to break the ties.
Chairman Clendon, you mentioned that there is perhaps a missing mechanism to address issues where there are conflicts between the legislative and the executive branch. One of the answers to your previous questions, as a commission, we considered whether or not the city council attorney should be able to be fired by the city council. And as this body voted no, do you think that, and I think that was floated in one of the questions, is probably a response to what you identified as an issue. Do you think that is too heavy-handed and not the response?
I'll expand that to a larger degree, and that's why I think one of the questions was, should the city council be able to hire an executive level and direct level staff?
That and the city.
I'll give you some background. So, and again, I want to preface this is not personality dependent, because I will say that I have a great working relationship with the mayor's office, and I really do. And there's been moments, trust me, we've had some contentious knockdown, drag out kind of stuff, but generally as council chair and mayor, I think we work well together. And I think that and staff right now is very accessible. I don't have any issue with staff, but there was a time, and those people are no longer with us, that I would call a director and they wouldn't call me back or refuse to talk to me. So the problem with that is if you have either a carrot or a stick, you know, and we are responsible to provide constituency services. So let's just say that the department that is in charge of widgets, I have a constituent that has a problem with the widgets, and that person in that department just refuses to talk to me as a city council person or won't return my phone calls, I can't do my job as a city council person. Well, if that person's just not doing it, and I don't have any carrots to give them because I'm on city council, if I don't have the stick, they're not gonna call me back. And I had 2 examples, personal examples of that when in the first year or so of being on council. Again, one of those persons is no longer with us. 2 of those persons no longer with us. So that, I think that's where that comes from, is that what is the incentive for that staff person to treat the council with respect and be able to have that relationship? And if there's no incentive, again, just as an employer-employee relationship, if there's no incentive, I don't think it should be a minority vote. I don't think 4 people. I think it should be hell, even if it's 6. But I still think that there should be something that says if you are so derelict at your job, just like, just like Congress can impeach members of, of the cabinet. If they get a certain, certain level, there should be some type of mechanism to hold people accountable. If they're really that derelict, if they cross that line. It's tough to get 4 votes on council to get to a majority. It's almost impossible to get 5, and even if you made it 6, I mean, it would have to be really clear dereliction to be able to get that. But if there was some mechanism to bring that, it would not be a bad thing to do. And I know I'm gonna get a whole lot of moans and groans from administrative staff on that, but I think it's probably the right thing to do.
You mentioned the tiebreaker. I think we were discussing it before about the city attorney and how, and we asked him as well, as how does he make his decisions? And did he feel that he always leaned in favor of the mayor or city council? He said neither. I just make the best decision for the entire city. So what is your take on that? How do you feel about that? Do you feel like that is a tiebreaker when there is a butting of heads between the administration? I have to ask, but we ain't asking the question, we need to ask the question.
I think that there's an inherent bias when you, an employer-employee relationship, similar to the answer I just said. When you have that stick, and you know that you can be fired by the person that you're going to be reluctant to give an opinion that person doesn't want. If they know they can remove you from your position. That being said, I don't think that we have an attorney that's going to give an illegal opinion, but some of this stuff is gray, Right. It can go either way, it's not black and white. Black and white stuff is easy. If there's a pure legal opinion, this is the way it is, but there's a lot of gray in this. And in these legal opinions, as the lawyers here know, and again, I've had previous city attorney, great friends with, love her to death. Scott, I've got a great relationship with, so I'm not talking about personalities, I'm talking about procedures based on whoever it is. If you could have Matilda Hunn or, Sister Mary, it doesn't matter, whoever's sitting in that position, it should be a person blind. It should just be about the structure. And I think that that's where you have to, have a stop gap measure to be able to protect the decision based on that.
Right, and I think with our discussion, we were just saying how, we were pulling up documents and articles and all that stuff, trying to look at history.
Right.
And history is true and repeats itself, and that's gonna keep being a problem until we find a solution, so. That's what I have to say.
Any other questions on these before I, new ones?
I have a related question to, I think it's related to salaries. You've mentioned several times, and I completely agree that Tampa is such a dynamic city, it's growing complexity, in population, in budget. Do you consider it a part-time job? I mean, just to put it.
No, I immediately got roasted in this and realized, no, I mean, it ebbs and flows. I never work less than 40 hours a week. I mean, some weeks, especially my first year and a half, it was like, everybody around me was like, first officer, what is wrong with you? Why are you doing this? I was working 7 days a week, 12 hours a day, just, and the amount, there's a massive, if you do this properly, there's a massive amount of just reading alone. And you're not just sitting on city council, you're serving on the other boards, which involves a lot of reading and a lot of information. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of it, and constituency work. I mean, from my perspective now, being chair, of course, you've got, I'm also dealing with, I've got a couple of employees too, so like I've got performance reviews, those kinds of things. So, meeting with the heads of the city and meeting with the mayor, and there's throwing beads in parades. There's always something going on. There's always, it's not, I don't even think our least performing council person, I would consider them part-time.
You mentioned, thank you for making that. You mentioned the additional staff primarily from a legal standpoint. Is that the only area? Because the question wasn't specific to legal, so I just wasn't sure. There's a reason for that.
No, I think that there's been a lot of discussion amongst council. We have a scheduler to try to relieve the scheduling burden on the list of days is tough. I mean, just keeping my schedule is a full-time job, just so Sam is constantly working on my schedule. And but I think that's subject to be, I think they want the ability as we schedule the needs arise. I mean, honestly, like when we were creating this committee, it might have been good to be able to have temporary staff, or when things are happening, to be able to have the temporary aid come in to help, help folks out. And I think it's the flexibility of rising and falling with the needs at the time. It could be seasonal too.
We move on, folks, to see what else we have. Some of these are updates as opposed to questions.
And the single member districts, their constituency services is a lot greater than mine. I'm citywide. Generally, people call their single member district before they call my office. So their workload is a lot greater than my workload, especially District 4. Those South Tampa people are. So it's like, they get a lot, yeah, see that, right there. She needs a full-time person just to manage her call. But so those single member districts, so there's some discussion as the city grows and the complexity that possibly some of they can use some help too, maybe, 1.5 legislators or something like that.
We have some open questions here. We have gotten some information about them. We have information that I sent to everyone about analysis of salary data that came to. We talk about disclosing conflicts of interest here, and then this is one around overriding mayoral policy or executive orders. Any questions on those? Okay. Keep us moving. Some of these are notes we recommend. I presume if we've answered them that we don't ask again, so let me know. And we just answer that. Yes. She's very persuasive. I'll answer it in the negative.
Well, there's one that was answered in the negative that I've been compelled to come down and talk to you guys about.
I'll get back to it.
Investigation powers.
So why don't we talk about that a little bit if you have some comments and sure we can ask
But
questions.
I've been compelled to bring that up.
Right.
So I think part of that is, again, it's, we have the investigation powers on the legislative side, legislative only, under her. So I think there's been some discussion is, what if there's bigger than that? There's been allegations of things passed, we don't have a mechanism to address those allegations. You'll see all the time in city council, people will come before us in public comment and throw out these awful allegations, but it really, for lack of a better word, it has to fall out of the ears with us because we don't have the ability to do those things. So there's people that talk about maybe that should we have an IG in the city? Should it be referred out to some other general counsel to investigate? Should there be a mechanism to investigate this type of things, or should council have that? Problem with council having that is we also do not have the ability to screen people. So I mean that becomes problematic. So there. I will dump that on you guys to think about that again, but know that, I mean, I can't even tell you how many times since I've been on council, we've had people come in and throw out these allegations and things that are happening in the city that we have no tools or mechanisms to deal with. It just goes to like HR, but there's no internal mechanisms to follow up on that stuff. So that's the problem, and I'm relaying that as kind of a consensus from council on now. So that's the council.
I do have a question about that. For instance, in Congress, whatever investigations we are seeing on whether it's EFC files or whatever else, it's always based upon Congress saying we are considering legislation to deal with this subject matter, and therefore that's how we get to investigate these things. So under legislative powers, could you not be able to investigate an allegation that may come from public comment?
I'll leave that to the lawyers. It's well above and beyond my expertise. I don't know. Again, this is not one of those things that I'm deep diving in, but I have witnessed the situation. I don't know what the resolution is. It puts us in a very uncomfortable situation. I know that. I mean, it's really awkward. And I don't know what the solution is.
Well, good, Bill.
You made a comment about the inability to issue subpoenas with 2.14 gives the city council.
I've been advised that we do not have the ability to. Well, there's no way to enforce those.
It's restricted to legislative
Right,
matters. So our discussion here, I think, was, do we strike out legislative, right? That's kind of.
That's what, yeah, that's what we were talking
And we
about.
also try to put it.
So even if I did balance it, I couldn't do that because it's all restricted legislative.
It's mixing apples and oranges. The city council does have the power to subpoena and shall have the power to punish for contempt.
And
So-
of course,
Pardon?
I wish Marty was not here, because I believe what the issue is, even though it says that, there's no mechanism for us to do it. It's a paper tiger, it's a paper tiger.
Yeah.
It's a paper tiger, I say that, but we don't have the actual ability to do that, we don't have the legal authority to do it. That's how I've been briefed by legal. Even though it says that, we don't have the ability to do it.
Well, that's one that as a group, we should have fleshed out for us. But I can't get there, I mean, I can read the English language just like we all can, but if there is something behind the, curtain, right? The odds behind the curtain.
And again, as
It's
not
either
lawyers,
Scott Steady or Marty or whomever it may be, then we need to have some, discussion.
I guess I'm just curious what counsel you've been provided in terms of what limitations is the word legislative constrain you to, because we've discussed that a lot here and heard a lot of different opinions about what each of us think it means, but there's only one person whose opinion really matters and they're not in the room. So I'm curious what your, and we haven't heard what your opinion is about that, so I'm curious how you read it.
I mean, I think our read it as it's written, our authority on the legislative branch of government is the ordinances, passing ordinances, and that's our legislative power, is to pass ordinances. It doesn't fall within the realm of passing an ordinance. It's not within our legislative power. I mean, that's our stick or our carrot.
You mentioned HR. If the scope of the authority of council is legislative, and it can issue subpoenas and investigate anything within the scope of its power, if something's outside the scope of the power, what would be the result of that investigation if you're without power to act on it?
We don't do the investigation without the power to act on it. In other words, it falls, so if somebody comes in and says, XYZ occurred in the city of Tampa, but it doesn't fall within the scope of the charter, the city council charter, it doesn't go anywhere with us. It's just, there's no ability for us as a legislative, there's no oversight. And there's no inspector general in the city of Tampa. I mean, I think the only oversight would be with the state statute, and this is just my past history. Maybe the state attorney has some authority over certain allegations, there's certain allegations that were raised for elected officials and whatnot. It falls with the state, but other than that, there's nothing, I don't know where that falls and who is it responsible for, but I know it's not city council.
Right, and I think what we've been struggling with, and I'm gonna speak for my colleagues, is should that investigative power be expanded beyond what it is? And the question I'm having is, if we were to expand it beyond legislative matters, what would you then do with that information if it's beyond legislative matters and you can't act on it?
I would,
And that's not being rhetorical.
I would encourage you again, I'm one person. I would seek out information from one of the folks that appointed you guys and get more background information for people that appointed each one of you. And then talk to other folks that have had experience in the city in the past, try to gather more information on that, reach out to other people, because I honestly can't answer a lot of questions. This is not my thing. I can't answer the questions on this. I only can hear when we all got together back in this room and talked about this issue and maybe a couple times on the nights. And then of course my anecdotal observations and absorbing from past things that have happened in the city, but it's not, I wouldn't come up here and talk as a subject matter expert just on stuff that I've heard, just Any other questions before we scroll down?
Well, I should just comment, I'm not an attorney, obviously, but I think the logic is a little bit faulty that you need to prove that you can take action on something before you even seek out information about it. That's what we're talking about, is investigating, and if you can't even get access to the information through the investigations process, how do you know there's anything you can put about to begin with?
And I would think that if it's reasonably calculated to be within the legislative function, you can have an investigation. Well, I think what we're talking about is things that are not, right? So an HR issue, as the chairman indicated, would likely be outside of the HR function. They can't pass an ordinance on one HR issue unless they had decided they were going to do something, which they would have the power to do now, right? So that what we're talking about is the city council determines that they can't take legislative action on something. And they still want to investigate, right? And then, let's say they find a problem, what do they do with that? What do
When
they
you
do?
bring it to light, well, if you found a problem, one of the things we did talk about was the investigation itself, you could bring a real problem to light. You know, there is benefit to uncovering the problem. And then you have the well, you got the DOJ, you got a lot of the Attorney General, I mean, you got, you know, I hear you, I'm not arguing against you here.
But if there's a potential criminal, then you would turn it over to the DOJ.
Once you found it out, yes, you investigate it, it comes to light, whoa, you know.
But then just labeling something as an HR issue automatically assumes that there isn't also a dual purpose that's budget related or related to an ordinance that has been passed, like. It seems like we're saying, don't touch it, if it has anything to do with anything that's outside of this. I mean, I'm saying the way the plans are written, I don't know how else you would interpret.
Can I encourage you guys, I don't think you all need me for that, so I think discussion has to be had. I think discussion has to be had, but I think y'all should talk to the groups, because I think there's a lot of energy around this that is not my energy. But I think y'all should talk to folks like Wenju and other people that are in the city and get that background and then maybe bring that back to the table to talk. That'd be my input. Again, I think I've kind of exhausted my level of input on this particular
Thank you
issue.
so much.
Who told you it was a paper tiger, or who do you suggest we go to find out that?
You can talk to Marty or I know you can talk to Bob. I don't think you should.
We tried to get.
The problem is, maybe talk to Scott too. I mean, just get that information. I'm just Scott and Marty talk.
It was indicated to us that Mario was instructed not to put us, not put me on the spot, but we would like for him to do that if you would take that under advisement.
Here's the problem, and a couple of y'all have heard this from me. And it probably goes back to the original sin of the job. So when Marty's an employer, employed by, and then has the relationships. This is one of the reasons why when we first brainstormed the rules for this committee of not having it on YouTube and not having so that people could come in here and speak candidly without having this broadcast forever and out and about. So we wanted people to be able to have those open and honest conversations without, like say a city employee wanted to come in here and talk to you guys. We didn't want them to fear a retribution. So that was actually the reason why we asked this not to be broadcast was so that there was. So that, and I think Marty is a city employee, and I think all the city employees, I think there's a great effect. I mean, you would, it's just a natural thing, and I think city council didn't want to put him in that position either. Because he also has relationships, he has to show up to work the day after. And so I would want to protect him from having to, have that problem too. Me, I say, but I'm a politician. These guys are employees. There's a difference between a politician and an employee.
So maybe our council can talk to Marty and what that is.
That's a good idea.
I don't know that there are any others. You feel like we can say? No, any other questions for the chair?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome anytime. And like I said, if you need something else, I'd be happy to come back. I know the people I've worked, the other 6 folks, I'm sure they'd be happy to come. I encourage you to reach out to administration staff too, if you've got these issues. I think they'd be happy to come. I'm sure if the mayor's schedule permits, I'm sure she'd be happy to come, answer questions about their perspective, but you gotta be together from everybody. Yes, do the good work and God love you. Very good, absolutely.
Thank you.
Thanks. How about this?
You guys good to press on, or would you like a quick break? Press on or a quick break? Press on, you can roll. Okay. Okay. We go back to 2.01 for the plan. We had a number of requests in this area. Planning Commission presented to us last time. We had the city attorney here and of course provided a summary of election law discrepancies with the draft ordinance that would help resolve. If you remember, the Planning Commission talked about 2.01 and 8.03, I think it was, around the time frames for things. So those have been out there shared with all of you to digest. There's been another response around whether or not the council can amend redistricting after completed by the Planning Commission. After submission, the short answer is no, they cannot. I extracted the money statement, so to speak, from this. Basically states that they're not involved in that process and cannot overrule it or change what comes before them. So that was a question you had raised. I needed to clarify a request because I couldn't figure it out after I wrote it on the whiteboard. The recordings are just of the screen. We don't get a chance to see you write things, so I couldn't find when I wrote it. But there was an action item around asking for redistricting legislation. Forgive me, I cannot for the life of me remember who asked or what we were looking for there. But I wanted to get that for you.
So, I don't know,
Yeah.
but I would surmise that it rounded back to the second point, which was we were provided with the charter language dealing with redistricting, as well as special law 74, something that's been amended and eventually codified through a charter. You guys know which one I'm referencing, the numbers. And that would be the redistricting legislation. And I think that maybe that was, the request was actually number 2.
Okay.
And we were looking at, do we need to request an amendment to the state law? Can we do that by ordinance today? And the gist was, at least as I understood it, which one are we following? Is it working? And should we make the match? And I don't know if that required a change to the state law, which I think we can do by ordinance, but I'll leave that to everyone else. And there was a nice summary that was provided.
Right, but what Scott has shared is they already had come up with an ordinance to fix the discrepancy.
That's
So this has already been dealt with
And
and.
it does need a charter.
Right, what they would like to do is include that, should the council decide to make changes and all, they seek that change at the same time.
Right, I don't recall that we had any specific changes that we wanted beyond the discrepancies.
They noticed it as well and want to clean that up.
I'm sure they've noticed it over and over again. Yeah, that's awesome.
You're motivated.
I had a question about that, so I was reading and it probably because I'm not a lawyer, didn't make sense to me. And it's gonna get super abstruse into the weeds here, because I'm gonna be referencing some of the sections. But was it used in the comparison? With the document, with the comparisons between the different sections in law?
Right.
So you had the general law supersedes subsection 2.01 and the related law 8.03 originated as a special act. It should be consistent with the general law. Redistricting therefore needs to be accomplished by April 1st, 2026. And then in the draft ordinance, it says prior to November 1st, you're immediately following. Why did they put April there instead of November? Maybe it's.
You can ask them that question, but it's not my drafting, so.
Bear with me. You're asking why things will not November in the ordinance that we discussed before.
Yeah, in the draft. It's probably something super obvious that I'm just not like smart enough to notice.
I think he said November, not April.
In the draft, they have
Yeah.
April, but in the comparison sheet I was reading,
It was November.
Um,
Okay, so you were.
yeah, it just seems like flip-flop to me, and maybe I just don't understand what I'm looking at. But I mean, the professional can get it right, it just makes sense.
We can follow up for that one. Did we, given that we've gotten some answers, with respect to this content for 2.01, does anyone wish to pursue any changes to 2.01?
That's the composition of these 7 members?
Yes, citywide. What the chairman mentioned was actually, in line with our feeling that the next charter review commission, it might be appropriate to look at that. So he was saying the same thing. Will be, so no changes as of now.
I'll let the record show that I would like to open that can of worms, but I think I'm getting the vibe that probably it's gonna be a no from most people.
Does anyone feel like Bobby Rogers at the moment?
What do you mean by that?
Non-members, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Have that
have a
discussion.
discussion
more?
on expanding it now, yeah.
So from 7 to this.
I would say no, that would be mine.
I want to give your thoughts real quick.
Yeah, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, sure. I think the presentation from the planning commission was amazing. It was so helpful, and the gentleman who presented it did a phenomenal job. If we, I'll now, but if we pull up some of that data, I believe Tampa was the city with the lowest ratio council members to population within our kind of band of population peer cities. We have a long history in the city of Tampa of having really a lot of representation from our city council members. If you go back and look at the history, historically, it's been a much closer relationship between who's up on the dais and the people they represent. And now as the city's grown so much, it's never been this much of a disparity between how many people, even from the single member districts, let alone the citywide representatives have to answer for to those constituents. I guess it might just be like a political philosophy thing, but I tend to favor a government, especially local government, where there's a closer connection between, in terms of population size, between the constituents and the councilman or councilwoman who represents them. So that's my starting point for it. From there, huge discussion, because then we have to decide what type of composition the council should be. So my recommendation is if members are not open to having that discussion, we should probably just do like a yes or no if we want to go down that road, because that's gonna take a ton of time. And if we're already feeling that we don't want to do it, then there's no point in it. I would be happy to, but.
Does anyone feeling the same sentiment around this?
Well, when we initially brought that up, I was in the camp of thinking that could be a good idea, going 7 to 9, because I was looking at population numbers. But the gentleman who spoke to us, when he told, one of the things that I looked at was significant cost in doing that right now. So that is bothering me, the fact that, money's tight. And I think he said it's $1 million a year, some number, it was a really high number. And then I haven't heard, and maybe I need to, call the city councilman who appointed me or whomever and say, I actually talked to Councilman Carlson, and he didn't see it as an issue. I'll check again, so to speak, but, I haven't heard from them. I thought I would, that it was more of an issue, Bobby, so it's not enough, even, I know what you think, I hear you. It's just that I don't think it's that, I don't think that's the battlefield. I don't know, I'm just giving you, not a yes or no, but I'm leaning heavily in the no, Bobby, because of the reasons I've just given you. Not that I, was missing part of that.
I just comments, I hear what you're saying too, and I thought it was really helpful to hear from the chairman today about specifically about the workload and, is this a full-time job or a part-time job? Because I think that also directly relates to the number of people that should be sharing the job of sitting on, serving as a member of the body. And so I'm curious if anybody has any thoughts or opinions about that, regardless of how the current members are treating the position. Do we as a group feel that it ought to remain a part-time job, or do we feel that we we want to get the most out of them as we can. And if it means that the time creep is gonna edge into 40, 45, 50 hours a week, and we're okay with that, that's fine, but I don't know how we can say both, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I was impressed with the presentation of Michigan Kingsley, and I really never focused on what they were making. That's ridiculous.
It is.
I mean, that's just absurd, because every council person I've talked to says this is not a part-time job, right? You ask any of them, how much time you spend, I mean, I heard Alan, 40 hours a week minimum. So, I think whatever the number is, it's certainly a whole lot more than this, and I think that's something we should be looking at, so I think,
But if we start paying them like it's full-time,
they work full-time.
then they work full-time, and then the need to add additional council members may be that need shifts. If we don't want to pay them for full-time, then we ought to consider having additional council members. Like, I see a relationship there, I don't know if you also do, but. And like, once we make a decision about one, it sort of affects future decisions about the other.
They're related, I think, the chairman expressed he doesn't know any of his peers working less than 40 today. So we're probably getting the hours. We have a few hands in order, Rebecca, then Garrett, and then Alan.
I'm happy.
And then actually no.
Although, no, I don't want to be withdrawn, I'm just happy to go last.
Oh.
I've got four more.
Okay, I was thinking the same thing, Stephen and Bill, where it seems like, if I could use the word quality is the issue, rather than throwing 2 more people at the body. It seems like they need more resources, they need a larger budget, they need to be paid more, they might need additional aides for noisier areas of town, right, that we heard. So that's what I've gathered talking, listening here tonight and talking with members of council, is that they just need more resources. I haven't heard any of them say, the real problem is we need 2 more people on the body. I think all the issues I've heard come down to, again, the pay, the resources of the budget, hiring additional staff, and then potentially more legislative aides.
Good summary. I'm going to shift it to Alan.
I think both things can be true. I think that because of population growth, there's going to come a time that we need to increase the size of the body, and I respect the chairman's point of view that there are a number of obstacles, including the space here, and the money will cost to accommodate that. I would also suggest that we look into comps with other similar sized cities in terms of what is available to members of those city councils in terms of both staff and pay. Are we underpaying the city council compared to similar sized cities? Number one, and number two, what is the method that we would come up with to figure out, for instance, how much a city councilor should get paid? Should it be tied to cost of living? Should it be tied to other city salaries? That's a formula that I think we need to find out more about and how we would utilize that.
Can we table that for when we get to that part of the charter and decide if that's an action we'd like to go chase? I think that makes sense. Get more data behind that decision making. Going back expressly to this though, and they are related, but we can cover the other in another place. I'd like to get a sense, I have a sense, but I want to confirm my sense that Robbie's bringing up good points. We talked about remembering this body can make recommendations to future review boards, right? We can, just because we have charter changes doesn't mean we can say we think you should look at these things for these reasons. But does anyone else feel sitting here today that this is worth changing in the charter besides Bobby, because you brought up good points? Does anyone feel strongly that that should be looked at?
No, I have something to say.
Go ahead.
I don't think they're going to approve that. Like what we're talking about today, we were gonna recommend, I don't think they're gonna approve it. They're already talking about one raise. So us, saying, well, let's bring 2 more people on, I don't think that's gonna work. But I see the need for it. They're definitely overworked. And like I was saying, the last time we met, looking at the map, it's just a big range of area, and you gotta get to this christening, and you gotta get to this ribbon cutting, you gotta get to this and get to that, and get to, it just seems like a lot, but they signed up for it, so.
Right, so a couple thoughts, I think there's, whether or not the council adopts what you say, I think there's value in you saying it or making decisions for a recommendation. You can't predispose whether they do anything with it or not. But again, it sounds like no one sitting here right now feels that this is worthy of really changing.
What's changing, I just want to go for it,
Okay, so show of hands, who wants to change his body? And Ashley, is that true?
no,
So, no.
I don't know what.
I'm trying to,
Well, I was
you're kind of
an hour on
splitting
it.
it too here, kind of like I support it, but I don't think they'll,
No, I
so just one.
understand what
Just
you're
one.
saying, I understand what you're saying, it's just,
Right.
I'm a realist, I don't know, I'm sorry.
For the sake of progress, I'd like to keep us moving.
Beth has something to say.
Oh, you see what you did, you went to the end, and I forgot about you. Go ahead.
None of us did, though, we were gonna.
I appreciate all my thoughts, but I don't wanna take anyone else's time, unless we're gonna move forward.
I don't,
Well, let's. count the votes.
It's 8 to 1.
Yeah.
I think we're down to one.
I think
Again.
everybody, okay, sorry
Yeah.
about it.
I'm just not on good.
Let me,
Thank you for voicing your,
Can I-
stand something.
can I ask
That's a
you
good point, Bobby.
a related question, show of hands, who thinks we should make a recommendation that the next group who sits in these chairs takes this seriously into consideration? Yeah, okay, so I just want to capture
Look
that.
at it.
Right,
Look at it.
bursting at the seams.
It's a long time.
I still feel like we haven't adequately addressed whether or not we think the positions are full-time or part-time, whether or not they should be. Like, I guess, the yes or the no conversation that we just had was that we need another full-time council person or another part-time council person.
You said table until we talked about it with salaries, I
It's.
Yeah.
I'm not talking about the number, I'm
thought. No,
just
I know,
saying.
but I thought he was gonna bundle the part-time, full-time with
Yes.
salaries.
Because to me, the question changes if it should be a full-time council or a part-time council, to me, the answer changes.
It
So
sounds
let me open up the can of worms, I'm just saying, that's why I was.
So this doesn't stipulate either of those conditions, and I think we're getting full-time work, which is a problem when we look at salary. I think that's kind of where we're looking
This
at
is
it.
a part-time salary, is what you're telling me right now?
But salary is a salary, it's predicated on the concept of part-time, but the reality is the
Correct.
work is large enough to justify 40+ hours.
It doesn't say this is a part-time job explicitly.
No, I was making
It says
that.
Yeah, Ron, before we move forward,
And we don't have to talk about it, I just want to be on record, I don't think we ought to be making recommendations of what the next appointed body 8 years from now should do. It's just a way far away off and a lot to change between now. So I think we pass on it and they do what they do, that's my opinion. Again, I don't think we have to discuss it, I just want to be on the record that I don't think.
just to clarify, my thought was to recommend that they revisit it seriously for certain reasons, not that they decide anything. Go ahead, Rebecca.
I changed my vote, I agree with I'm sorry, I know that's not going Robert's rules of order, but that's actually what I felt in my heart, and I was just like, but yes.
So
I also,
You don't like to-
So we
I
don't.
love Delaney
They're
Ward.
charged.
That being said,
Go through it anyway.
we have
Yeah.
no idea what it's gonna look like in years, it
Okay.
will almost,
They're gonna figure it out. I agree.
there's gonna be so much new technology, the world is gonna be,
Leave it alone.
we may all be here in like atom form, like, I feel it.
Okay.
Years.
I'm okay with moving it, I think we're okay with removing it, just like we were initially okay with it, but again, it makes sense. They're gonna go through the same process you did,
Yeah.
so.
They're gonna see us on YouTube.
Okay. This was one, this was a unique one, because we didn't make a decision, but we also didn't need anything, so we just need to come back to it quickly. And I do want to try to stay on the topic with these, for the reasons Ron said, which is by the time we get back to them, it's already done. So this is, council members must be resident elector of the city for 1 year prior to start of term. And for single member districts, for 6 months prior to start of term. Term limits of 2 terms, need a single or at large, or can switch from single to at large or reverse. And run another 2 terms, no more than 4 terms in a row. Again, I don't know that we ever landed or even remember exactly what we discussed, or if anyone had any heartburn, but it's Rebecca.
My recollection was that there was, The concern was, some people felt, not me, but some people felt that people should be a resident of the district for more than 6 months.
Okay.
And if I'm wrong on that, I apologize. That was my recollection.
That second bullet point, was that adopted 8 years ago? Ron, do you remember?
I think-
I remember hearing some discussion
I
about.
think it was adopted there were some amendments that were adopted after the charter review commission. I think it was one of those, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yes.
Okay.
So it came directly from city council,
Okay.
I believe. I'm not a huge fan of ceremonies, but it is what it is.
So this is what, 1 year for at large and 6 months for single member? Is that what that states?
You know,
This is summarized, so I want to make sure we still got
So
some.
it's 1 year across the board to make sure a resident
Of the city, and then within the district, for single member, it's the 6 month.
I would suggest that it be 1 year across the board, because I think we currently have a situation, in all sorts of seats that people are deliberately moving into districts, to run for office. And districts that they may or may not have connection to. And if there's a way to make it a little bit harder to do that, it's important.
So, I disagree, and I'm sorry. But I disagree with that because for 2 reasons. One is the edges of the districts can change. And so that people who have been in one district and associate with one district and may even be elected in one district could be shunted out. Now, by the timing, they're probably gonna be shunted out anyway because they won't be in there for 6 months, so I'm not sure I've solved my problem. But I also think that if somebody moves into a district and there have been allegations of shenanigans, and whether there were shenanigans or not, I don't know enough to say, but there's certainly been allegations of people saying they were living or they were not living. But I would prefer to have the voters have the ability to say, you don't speak for me, or you do speak for me, regardless of if they crossed a border a year or 6 months.
Well, to the first part of your statement, it can be language that should the contours of the district change because of redistricting, that would it would be safeguards for somebody who was redistricted out of their district. I think this happens so much that voters are rightly cynical, about the process. And so it's a year seems like a reasonable length of time.
I guess I don't understand the moving, because in my mind, what that is intended to do, you can't move to a different district if you're still sitting on council for the district that you were previously in. The only way to stay on is if you switch to an at-large seat. And you can't have moved into a different district 6 months before if you're already on council serving in a district seat. So I guess I know what you're saying, because I know that there are issues that have come up, but I don't see how to me, this is a lot more narrow than that. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So I guess the question to me of philosophically, do you have to be a longtime resident of the district to represent the district, or do you have to live in the district while you're representing the district? I tend to be more on the latter side. I'm more concerned with people being within the district while they're representing the district, as opposed to, because we do have a city that's rapidly growing. There's a lot of people who move to the city. I think our culture in the city has always been one of locally kind of go for the sort of network. And so for me, I would be less concerned of making it that you had to live there longer before the election, more that you gotta be there during the time of running it and. I could be swayed either way, but that's just my thought process.
I'm going to leverage our impromptu voting to keep us moving forward, just because I think it's helpful, not that the conversations aren't. Right now, Alan, your support of changing this to 1 year, does anyone else agree with changing this to 1 year? Bobby, anyone else? Agree, and the counter, does everyone who didn't raise his or her hand agree that this can be left unchanged? Yes. So right now, again, I don't want to rudely stop conversation. I'm trying to balance progress with input. If it's okay with you, can proceed without diminishing what you said. Thank you. Okay, so.
Can I ask one question? I'm sorry. The year is the residency for the member to be in their district for a year? Is that what the question is on the table?
Yeah, 2.02, Kathleen. And I apologize if you have your hand up, it's hard to see.
Kathleen, I think the issue is everyone has to live within the city limits at least 1 year before they're elected. For the single member districts, there's an additional requirement that you live in that district at least 6 months. And I think Commissioner Cohen's suggestion was to extend the 6 month living in the district
To a year. Okay.
Two of us in the group favored that, and the remainder did not. Kathleen, I think asked.
Okay.
I guess even if you did favor it, it would still be a minority. So I'm going to keep us moving.
Right, there's actually two parts to that. We might just want to do a quick poll, but
Oh, sorry. Yes, you're right. There's a second, you're referring to the second bullet around the term limits?
within the first bullet,
Okay.
there's the 6 month versus 1 year question, but then there's also the prior to start of term versus some other point in time.
Okay.
What
are your thoughts there that you'd like that change, or you can have a specific?
It's done, my homework, a lot of charters have, prior to qualifying to prior to start of term. I favor that, and I'm gonna be totally transparent, simply because it just pushes the back a little bit, and it's, I guess, a little bit of a rhetorical move to extend the time.
And I know we want to move on, but that was I guess my original point, that can this extend to candidates for office? Because I think that's where we see it most often, that people are looking for a seat and are willing to move into a district, or at least get an address in the district to qualify, and that's what I find.
Your thoughts about prior qualifying versus term?
Well, I think we discussed that previously, and we thought that it was an issue for the planning commission to be able to turn around their redistricting recommendation, but based upon their presentation, there were conflicting dates in their charter language anyway. So my recollection is that they were okay with using the earlier date. I don't know if that means that that's more feasible, that the 1 year is more feasible, but I think that was the issue, is that how do you know where the district line is going to be a year ahead of time if it hasn't been set? So as long as that can be decided, I don't see a problem with changing it to qualifying.
Who would give us a timeline for that? Like, can we do like a one time with the two?
You know, we have to put what you said side by side and see what it looks like.
So I kind of go back to, for me, it's about living in the district that you serve. And saying, well, in order to apply for the job, you have to live close by that company for a year before you apply for the job. If you want the job, then you've got to move it and live close to the job. For me, it's more about when you're serving where you live as opposed to when you're running.
Which would be the opposite, basically keep this as is. Stephen, do you advocate, if we work out the other item, do you advocate for qualified versus start of term?
Are we talking, and to use clarification, are you talking about the 1 year, or the existing resident of the city, or are you talking about the residency in the district? which one or both, or both or either, or both. Okay, because, yeah, for both, because the 6 months prior to the start of the term, if the issue is that we have people that are switching seats to stay on, moving to stay on council, we've already eliminated that with the no more than 4 years. So I don't know what the 6 month resident of the district for 6 months prior to the start of the term, I don't know what the intent of that. What does that even effectuate? If you can only serve 4 years total anyway. Now, because that was added, the no more than 4 years in a row, I think was added last time.
For terms or years?
Do you think for sitting members or for a new
Yeah.
council member? A new council member, this would apply to as well, right? Who's not serving.
Right, but the only people I mean, the 6 months prior to the start of the term living in the district doesn't affect somebody that is already on council. It really only affects somebody that is newly being pursuing office. So.
In the sense what you're saying, that's the discussion based on that population, not existing council.
Right, I think we're conflating the two.
But if you're, not taking issue.
I mean, unless I'm missing
But
something.
if you're switching from like, citywide to a new district, you could move into a new district to run for a district seat as
But if you move out of your district, then you're no longer, and you're sitting in for that district right now, if you move out 6 months in advance and you're already in council.
If you're citywide, yeah, if you're citywide and you're.
You moved while you were citywide?
Yeah.
Yes.
Correct.
That would apply to them.
Again, I'm not saying it's an issue or anything, I'm just pointing out that you could be in the middle of 8 year, 2 terms as citywide person, then want to run as a city under district.
So it'll be a separate use case of this, because Rebecca, then I want to get a sense for if our appetite's moved on this front.
I'll wait, I just don't understand what Steven said, so I just.
Okay.
That,
Let me ask this question more directly. Show of hands, who wants to keep this as is?
I got mixed up, okay? Qualifying is before, before you gotta figure out who you are or what, all that stuff. And by that point, during the qualifying rounds or that term, that period of time, you guys are saying that the person can live outside of the district at that point. Now, if they it's determined that they qualify, then they need to figure some stuff out, because they have time until the start of the term is going to be, which is in 6 months. Or no,
they have to be there 6 months before they start.
Right, so they'll figure out, okay, I qualify, I live out in Hillsborough County, now I need to figure out how to,
Or you have to be in the city.
at the time of qualification round.
A year prior, you have to be in the
Okay.
city, but for the district seats,
Okay.
it's 6 months.
Right.
So everybody has to live in the city, whether you're district-wide
Yes.
or in a district.
Right.
But if you are in a specific district, one of the 4 districts, you have to have your homestead within the district.
While you're applying.
It's whatever, I don't know exactly, that's where the kind of is it 6? It's right now 6 months before you're elected, so you may qualify, I don't know, 9 months, and then you gotta scramble and get your house in.
That's what I'm asking. You may live out in the county and you're like, oh, well, I wanna go run in District 5, but right now I live in Hillsborough County.
No, you
You're
have
in
to
the
live in
city.
You
You're always
still
out
live
in
the city.
The city's a year.
A year prior
Okay.
in the city.
In the city.
You may be in Seminole Heights and you may be like, you know what, I really speak to the people in South Tampa.
Okay,
My heart is in South Tampa, these Heights people, they don't get me.
okay, got it.
This only affects people that have lived in the city for more than a year, but have moved into a different district within
Okay.
6 months of the term start. It's
Oh,
very
got it,
narrow.
got it, got it. This is a very.
It's a very narrow situation.
Amount of people, okay. Okay, got it.
I'm gonna ask 4 hands,
Why would
in
you do
favor of
that?
keeping this.
That's some life changes there.
Kathleen, I apologize, are you in favor of keeping this language as is? You're on mute, and you may not, yeah, you are, sorry.
Yeah, I'm just saying, what problem are we trying to solve? And I think I'm good with the language as is.
Broad.
Okay, that gives us 5. Okay,
Still
I already wrote it down, so.
Yeah.
That's what I'm at.
You're not broad.
What I'd like to do now.
Games.
So 2.03 organization, you requested 2 changes, I will show those to you, you don't have to find them, I'll just have to pivot to PowerPoint. 2 changes that Ken has completed. One was to add the word necessary to expedient and clarify what compel means. Give me a second, I'll pull that up and you can see it directly.
Is it happening?
Okay, so these changes are pretty straightforward, but do you want to ask if you accept it as is? So this related to the sentence near the end, council members may adopt such bylaws, regs, and rules of procedure for their own guidance and government as they may deem. Now expedient and necessary, and 2, instead of compelled to require the attendance of the members and to enforce the same by private penalty if they so elect. That was the ask, this was the response. Are we okay with the changes that Ken made to 2.3?
Trying to remember whether, my recollection was we replaced expedient with necessary. I trust that you captured what we talked about there, but what are the word expedient has a particular meaning, which means advantageous to the person or body. It seems to me to be odd or my limited experience in something like a charter or ordinance. Do you have thoughts on that word? If you don't, that's okay.
If I remember the conversation, the concern was to expand upon what we had in terms of speed. That you had a desire that these changes, bylaws, regulations, procedure also be deemed necessary. So I think expedient generally covered what you were looking for. It seemed like you generally covered what you typically see. I took from the conversation you wanted a little bit more. That's good.
Could, at the risk of sounding just like intolerably pedantic, I think expeditious is what you have in mind, which is like speed and efficiency, whereas expedient implies a certain usefulness that might be surreptitious.
Yeah, the definition I'm looking at has advantageous as part of it, like
Yeah.
it advantages someone, which is why it seems odd to me. Again, I don't have a strong feeling, it just strikes me as a, maybe not the right word for that. I know this is not, Ken didn't have that, he had the necessary, which I do think that they should be necessary.
Is necessary as its own word enough? Because that, you could argue that necessarily means any number of things they decide are necessary, including expedient. Right, so maybe that's where you're going wrong, but are you advocating for just as they may deem necessary? And then we don't have the connotations that expedient may bring, is that kind of where we headed on that from
That
now?
would be my suggestion, unless Ken advises us otherwise, I would defer his judgment on it, but if he feels like it's not, it won't create some legal issues, my suggestion would be to leave the expedient and the word expedient and just have it be deemed necessary.
I think necessary by itself accomplish the same thing.
Are we in agreement with that?
I thought we do necessary in this one.
All right,
Second.
and is the second half to the groups? Again, it's just a word, but words matter in charters. So instead of compel, use the word require, which
I think your concern last time was whether they could physically compel them to show up, where this would shift it to require as part of policy. fine, that was interesting.
That's good to me.
Are we okay with those changes on this?
Yeah.
Excellent. Good job, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Okay. Just want to make that stay easy. So, here with staff, we're on 2.04. I think we lost, Kathleen. So 2.04 staff, we're looking at council's staff, employee analysts, defined by qualifications and pay. We're talking again about city council attorney, aides, other staff positions. We heard some of the challenges that may involve. We have two questions we didn't get an answer to, but I want to go to the request and then double back. So we asked for the city attorney to attend. He's done that. He's answered our questions. We've got a better explanation, I think, from the chairman about why Martin couldn't join us. And then, of course, we have him here today. We do have a change here that I can pivot to. But I think first, maybe we can revisit these two questions that we didn't land an answer around. So the one is, should the city council attorney be allowed to hire additional staff and outside attorneys subject to budget approval of city council? So that was the question we didn't answer. And then we have another one after that. So thoughts on 2.04 question?
My understanding was they have that authority, right? The issue is the budget piece needs to be approved by the mayor, which they only get one crack at, right?
Right. Once a year.
So that if it's already in the charter, I don't think that, the question's answered in my mind.
Right, so this can be yes, but we don't resolve related issues around really how much flexibility we have. So, Steve, go ahead.
Well, I mean, the question doesn't say at the middle of the year.
Right.
The question says, should they be allowed to hire additional staff and outside attorneys subject to budget approval of city council? So the question doesn't reference, and they're having to approve it. It doesn't reference the fact that you have to have 5 out of 7 to do it, which I think those are the two things that the current charter says, and in the city council's budget. So it's a lot more narrow.
Right, so there could be a yes, but that doesn't mean we're done speaking about this issue and some of the things that this group may decide to recommend. Yes. What you say?
I was just gonna say, city council approves the budget, right? And they could, I don't have an expert on the city budget, but I'm sure that there's some budgeting for hiring of outside counsel over the course of the year. I would presume that they could do that in the budget process annually. Just seems odd to me to want to amend that, right? There's a process for it. And they could say, we're gonna give Marty an outside council budget of $250,000 a year. And then if they don't use it, they don't use it. I would presume that's the way the meeting budget works. Just like they don't know what, and it's similar to all budgets, so it's unclear to me what the problem we would be trying to solve there. Other than something emergent that comes up that the mayor disagrees with, and at least not 5 people agree with on city council. And it would seem to me if it's that emergent, then we should have alignment on it. I mean, they could budget for emergencies, right? That would be the responsible thing to do, is say, in case something comes up, we're gonna budget $300,000 for outside council.
It sounds like our answer to this is yes on its face, but that we're talking about a second question around flexibility to do budget amendments to account for greater needs than the budget. Is that a fair assessment? So say that. Say that.
No, I don't think that the city council attorney should be allowed to hire additional staff. I think the city council should be able to hire additional staff, and I think they have the ability to hire additional staff.
Yeah.
You're saying that the council.
Well, you said yes. That is a different question than what you just said. This is, should city council attorney be allowed to hire additional staff?
That's right.
And I do not think that they should, subject to city council approval or not. I do think the city council should have the ability to have a say in their budget and what they want to spend on,
Which might include additional legal support.
which could include.
That's a good clarification. Thank you. So, go ahead, Bobby.
I'm putting myself in the city council person's shoes. If I read this, I think you're onto something, because there's a little bit of confusing language in the charter. It's like the city council has the authority to create the positions, but then this is something different than that, where now it's the city attorney. Is that what you're saying?
Council is asking specifically if the council attorney can hire
Right,
additional staff.
right, and so when you said the answer is yes, my answer to that is no. I don't think the city council attorney should have the ability to hire people, even with later in consent or before, not later. He makes a decision, goes to city council, before it's approved, city council approves it. My answer to that is no, I don't know if everyone's is. There was a separate question of, or maybe what I heard Rob saying, we were saying yes to, which is, should city council have the ability to staff up as they see fit within the budget process? That's a different question.
I bet you that was the wrong question. City council meant to say, should city council have the ability to hire? That's just the wrong question. They couldn't have meant, should Marty be allowed to just go out and pick up the phone and say, I want to hire Ken?
Yeah.
No, that's not what they,
That's
I
not
think
what
Rebecca's right.
it says, but it says, can he do it subject to their approval, and I think that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I think that's the case.
Well, that's a separate question.
City council would.
Well, in either case, the budget right now is restricted, whether the attorney asks for more people or the council has money. Right. So they may be two sides of the same coin to the council, but the council would be a more accurate way to describe staffing up. Additional, it's not just attorneys, it could be, I think we're looking at a different issue. So with that in mind, would we be, go ahead, quicker than I want to make sure that if we're agreeing with this or not, we capture the red, Stephen.
I guess I think there's a disconnect between what the context that was provided earlier and what the question actually says, because the context earlier seemed to imply, for example, outside counsel, which is not, it's not an FTE, it's a contract, right? It's more of a, it's the question, if the interpretation of the question is a budget issue, we should answer it in the budget section of the charter. If it's a staffing issue, we should answer it in the staffing section. And I think that's what your point is that this is not about creating a new position and giving Marty the ability to do that. And I don't think that was their intent either. But it,
The question, that question.
Verbatim what came from council.
As far as I'm concerned, yes, I did it a long time ago, but I think I just copied and pasted.
I believe that it's there.
Go ahead, Ron.
Sorry. Yeah, just to clarify
Thank you. I just want to make sure, Ron, are you done anymore?
Yeah, finished.
Okay.
Just to clarify what I said initially, I was kind of, where I was going is, in effect, right, city council itself could hire an additional staff member for the city council attorney. That's what I was getting.
That's right.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say there. But I think to your point, Ron, I mean, council could add $250,000 in the budget for themselves for whatever contingency pops up. Now, in the charter, they already have that ability. I think that's where you're going with that.
Yeah.
Only restricted by the process that limits it to annually.
Yeah, but every year,
Right, every year they can.
right?
So either you pad with contingency, or you get
Well, you don't
flexibility to do a
You
BA.
certainly don't burn the money at it, right?
So, go ahead, Bob.
I think, shaking his head, I think there's like two discussions happening right now, maybe. I agree with you, Bill, when I was reading this, I'm gonna try to weave all these threads together. When I was reading this, in my mind, I was thinking, if I was a city council person, yes, I would want the ability to create a position, which is already there. And if it's the city council attorney who goes out, does the research, finds the person to contract with, interviews them, it puts them in front of me, I'll say yes. So I mean, when I read that, I'm thinking, yeah, they should be able to hire them, but I think Rebecca, your point was, then what I'm describing is different from what that question is asking, right? Which is, should the city council attorney be able to do what I just described without me as a council person voting on it, pretty much, right? Is that what you're saying?
But it says subject to budget approval by the city council, so that's not, you can't be unilateral to do it.
And that's the other
It's still
thread.
bound by the budget.
Right, and that's the other thread, which I gotta guess why Stephen's shaking his head, because the council could try to put that in there in the budget process. But then you get into the political battle of horse trading with, we're gonna pad our budget with this much, which might not leave money on the table. for things you
Maybe
want.
rather than looking at a question we still don't understand, which is a theme. We talk about what, as a group, you are advocating for. What are you recommending be done? That the council has a mid-year budget amendment allowance. What are we trying to get to, I guess? I think that's maybe a better way to spend our cycles on this, because we're kind of going back and forth around this. What, we can, by the way, we could even say, we're not sure if this is worded correctly, and leave it at that. I mean, we're not bound to answer these are instructive for us. But what do we want to propose, I guess is my question. Right now, the city council has a budget, it goes through the approval process, it's annual. It may be limiting if new requirements emerge that are beyond their capacity. What are we advocating? Go ahead.
I think, and I'm not advocating for this, but I think the solution would be to strike the language that says the additional cost must be approved by the mayor. And if council had the authority to hire people and not have the mayor's approval, then they could staff up whatever necessary. And again, I'm not advocating for that, but I think that's the suggestion or potential solution in charter might be wrong.
Yeah, and the issue with that is the budget itself has to be approved by those that check and balance. So
The council.
limiting the language, what that would do is essentially allow city council to expand the budget unilaterally at any point during the course of the year, which seems to me to be weakness. I mean, there's a check and balance there that is in place during the initial budgetary process, should continue to be in place.
I guess the question is, and I referred to this earlier, what happens in emergent situations, unanticipated situations, which the city council budget doesn't have? I mean,
Well, yeah, what happens, I mean, like anything else, right, we've gotta have a majority vote to do something in an emergent situation. If you don't have an agreement to change the budget doesn't get changed, given one part of the ability to unilaterally expand the budget is what's being asked, really.
Well, I mean, I think there's a difference between being able to initiate a budget amendment mid-year, which still requires the mayor to sign, and removing the mayor's ability to sign, on an amendment that's proposed by council. I think there are two issues there, and I'm sorry. Well, I find funds must come from council's budget to actually be a bigger issue than being approved by the mayor. I think being approved by the mayor can be stricken because the budget process requires that anyway. I don't think that to me, it's redundant to say, but I'm not gonna suggest that be removed, I'm just gonna say I think it's redundant. Saying the funds have to come from council's $2.7 million budget, and that they can't identify the funds elsewhere in the budget, to me is the more restrictive issue that probably prevents it from happening.
Right, in other words, if you don't have the money, you can't do anything else. But if you're allowed a BA and you find other funds to augment, yeah, that changes that.
BA, but also the ability to look outside of the tenth of a percentage of the budget of the city, that the council actually controls.
See, but I look at it the opposite, I look at it as giving council flexibility, that's what it says is, if you got the money for the budget, in the mid-year, you can make the decision unilaterally. If you don't have the money in your budget, then you gotta go back to the process, so in my mind, it's not a restrictive thing. It allows the flexibility to add people and consultants, as long as you got the money to do it. If you didn't approve yourself the money to do it, then you gotta go back to the process.
But they don't have the mid-year BA.
So that.
Why don't you do the beginning of the year?
Even within their budget, they don't.
I think what you're suggesting is you would do it at the beginning of the year, create a bucket, a contingency bucket, that's what I'm saying. So you don't have to come this year. And it's a $250,000 number, just make up the number, it's in the bucket, it is for emergent situations. If you outside counsel, you need to do whatever you need to do, it's there, you address it annually, I would suspect that happens all the time. There's a contingency bucket.
So why haven't they done it?
Well,
So that's one of them.
sometimes.
I mean, the question is obviously.
Sometimes they haven't figured out his answer.
I don't know.
Before I say to Bobby though, sometimes when you have more money, you find ways to spend it and then you need more money to find ways to spend. So maybe it has to do with the fiscal controls they're trying to put in place around that. Bobby does.
Things, what you described is, I'm on the same page with you, they can do it now, they can have the budget, have a reserve line in there, but then it goes back to the kind of politics game during the budgeting process. That is what it is, but the other thing that's, I think, a challenge for me is, I need to understand more about the mid-cycle appropriations process. I don't know enough about that to think clearly about this problem. So council cannot do that at all right now, is that the situation? Can someone clarify that for
I
me?
don't think anybody can spend money outside the budget, once the budget's approved, you gotta stick with the budget.
Well, the
Departments
only
can-
the budget off, only the CFO can initiate budget amendments mid-year, which are routine. Because you have to rebalance accounts as projects, especially with capital, as projects, as funds are not spent, you have to rebalance, but that amendment process cannot, and council still has to approve it.
Yeah.
But that amendment process cannot be unilaterally initiated by council, even if they know where to pull from, even if they're like, we're not spending this money, it's leftover money, let's move it. Because that's an executive function. They're asking for an executive function to be able to initiate amendments to the
In the county, we do budget amendments almost every board meeting, or very, very frequently. For good reasons.
But they're initiated by the county administrator.
And the county commissioners tell us. So, and they often follow decisions that the commissions are paid by. So we have an annual process. It could potentially allow for contingency if the mayor, that was taking the next step in your comments on it. Go ahead.
Are we presenting a false dichotomy here where we're saying that if we allow council free rein to initiate mid-cycle, I might even be using the wrong words here, but mid-cycle budget changes, can we tailor it in, if it's either all that or nothing, can we tailor it in to say only for the purpose of staffing for their city council staffing needs?
Well, I think that's what it already explains in the charter, it's just that it has to also be approved by the mayor, but they do have that capability anytime they want. It just
They
needs
could
to be
override,
approved.
right? And then they could override the mayor if they say, no, you can't have the money for your consultation lawyer.
I really can't
So
answer
it's-
that, can't think of a question.
Yeah, we're gonna shift to
Okay, that's a good question.
Here, look at that last sentence, and when it says here, okay, they create the new positions, funds for said positions.
Where you got 2.04?
Yeah, city council's budget. So it's gotta be in the budget, then it goes on to say, any additional cost thereof must be first approved by the mayor, addition to what, addition to the budget,
I think that means in excess of
the city
Yeah,
council.
city
budget,
council
yes.
budget, if it happens to be more than.
Right, okay, so in other words, it's there, but they would need the mayor's
Yeah.
approval to exceed their budget.
And now the council cannot override that if the mayor says no, then they're, right now they're.
That's what it says, Bob, the answer, yes, of course, that's right.
Yeah, I would agree that there's not it's not like an ordinance where there's a veto and then they can override it. The way this reads is the mayor would have to agree if it goes beyond. And that goes back to the original issue. Right now, they'd have to have a contingency budget. They have a single shot. What I heard the chairman ask for was the ability to have another process, whether it's a mid-year or something else, where the council could initiate a budget.
Does the charter preclude that, or is it just a matter of what happens? You know, the charter
It's in the state
basically says-
it's in the executive section that it's.
Yeah. Right, this goes back to the separation of powers between legislative and executive. At the time of budgeting, you have both branches working together that have to adopt a budget. You don't have a separate time period where that reoccurs.
And they could work together mid-year if that were so.
Right, they can work together,
And it'd be the same
because nothing stops the
process.
chairman from calling the mayor saying, I need you to initiate a budget, and the mayor just decide whether to do it or not.
So these are situations where the mayor said no, that's basically what we're talking about,
Yeah,
and should they be able to do it?
and then I think Ron's point was if you went the other way and you had city council unilaterally, you just start, increasing its budget, that's kind of,
Yeah, that's
that doesn't fly too well either.
No.
Could there be a percentage of council's budget where if they went beyond that percentage, then it would require a vote by the mayor?
I don't know why they don't just
I don't think you can do that.
in the initial budget.
I
It
agree.
just seems to make the
They
most
they
sense.
really don't want to, because then would say that there's gonna be too much money.
It's padding, it's.
It's not, it's being smart and having a contingency plan, you have a business that way.
Great, Steve.
Yeah, and whether or not the mayor gets to approve it, again, is moot, because she has to approve every change to the budget, regardless of what we put in this little section. So her weighing in is always gonna have to happen, period. That's why it's kind of pointless, because if they called her and she said no, it's gonna have to come back to her anyway.
Right, so even if we said she has to say yes and consider it, then she considers it as
On that.
so we're just,
And the council could do that to the budgets coming out of the mayor's office too. But it's more people involved, obviously.
well, they,
It's not as simple.
they could, the
It's not as
city
simple.
council can't say no to every appropriation
Yeah.
that the mayor
But
says,
that's a different calculus.
and that would be politics.
Right, right.
This one's hurting my head.
Really is.
I feel like we've gone full circle, and I feel
I think we're
like-
going around a few times.
But I feel like we've kind of answered it, so.
And
Can we answer the, not to lead it, but can we answer the question by saying we believe that it can currently be done as follows?
The question's like rhetorical for us to think about, or are we answering the question?
That's what I was trying to get at, I said, what do you guys want to propose? Because we've heard of a problem, this is an example where there's a problem we might decide to try to solve. Contingency, mid-year, but it seems to me both are subject to the state governments around those decisions.
I just don't feel comfortable that half the questions are about the city attorney, and the other half, we're saying they already have the power to. To me, like, something doesn't add up. If the questions don't make sense, and we look at it and we're like, don't they have the power to do that, like,
Well, I feel like he did answer that question, and he's the chairman, and I thought he answered it by saying, we don't want to put more money in the budget, we want to be fiscally responsible. Well, then, that's a political choice,
Yeah.
you feel good about,
Stick with it.
but you're still in the middle of the year, if you change your mind, the mayor's gonna have to have a say. That's how a budget works. Is that
Well said, Rebecca.
okay, process?
No.
Respectful.
that's what we agreed at the beginning to spend, so.
So back to your question. I'm sorry, I'm not on this.
No, go ahead.
Back to
It's
back to your
just, you guys
question,
keep talking.
and how to respond to their question. That's important.
If we have to respond, like it would.
Well, we don't have to respond at all,
The
but-
questions were good, we consider them and collectively these are the changes we made.
So maybe we should discuss that at another point and move through our items, because I think, I feel a little, at this moment, I feel differently, we talked to it, but we're spending an awful lot of time thinking about these questions that they gave us, and I think that it warrants, at this point, I think it's beneficial for them to know that, not just that we thought about it, but we thought about it, and this is the reason that we didn't, because otherwise they can get this back and we're just said no to everything, and they're like, well, we say yes. I mean, I feel like we're putting a lot of thought into it, and I would like them to understand our reasoning. And then if they disagree with it, they have the ability to do it, but at least it's out there that we just didn't say no to everything, and then they say yes, and I mean, I would like there to be a record that Ron, you persuaded me already tonight that I'm wrong, so.
Your points are well taken, I don't know that we have consensus on Brad, like in other words, if all 9 of us agree we don't wanna make a change, we may have 9 different reasons why we don't make that change. And if we try to memorialize what that is, it could consume a lot of time, I'm perfectly happy to do that, but that was my thought on like, do we need to answer the questions, or do we need to say these were great questions? We debated them for year in these meetings. And these were collectively the changes we came up with. I'm fine if we move
That,
to.
the record's gonna reflect that.
Right, and we have a lot of no's without lots of narrative, because we were moving forward, we're discussing that, we asked you, in many cases, all of you just said no. Right, some of these required more conversation. In fact, we had a close vote on the clerk one, I think, I remember like a 5-4. But what if we were to, yeah, okay, oh, I'm sorry.
I guess, and I hear everybody's points, I think what I've gotten back from, talking to the city council is that issues come up that they feel that there's nothing they can do about because they have no access to, money or a budget to do something about it. And, as a reporter, I, covered huge scandals that legislative bodies have been forced to investigate, but have not anticipated. And I'm wondering, and I don't think this is an answer that is in search of a problem, but I'm thinking about what would happen if there was a huge scandal that that the city council should investigate, but can't because there's simply no money to do it. And, you could say, well, that's the job of law enforcement, that's the job of the newspaper or TV station to expose it. But there are things that do happen that are, that legislative bodies should look into, that they may not have anticipated ever dealing with.
I think the answer, Alan, is have a contingency fee bucket.
I agree.
You go back to Rebecca, that's their choice at the beginning of every budgetary process. You do or you don't. If you decide, I don't wanna have a contingency bucket because I wanna be fiscal, I think it is fiscally responsible to have a budget for these extenuating services. I think it's a smart move. But if you don't, what would you recommend to fix that problem? I don't think you can have mid-year the legislative branch saying, okay, I'm gonna modify the budget and I get $500,000.
Can we see the budget? Is that something accessible to us?
It's on the website.
And there's no contingency or?
Well, if there was, they'd be able to access it. I mean, in other words, if it's a contingency, there should be an extra, extra X dollars there to cover these extra circumstances.
It is, I don't know what I did check.
I like your.
If we consider, I'm just throwing this out there just for you guys to do more with it. But if it were some percentage basis, is it in this group's authority? Well, it's a recommendation, of course, but is there a way to strip out the mayor's ability to veto a piece of their budget? Can we say that has to accompany, you know what I mean? Like, is there a way to protect that contingency? Because I think right now the mayor could still say no. You want a contingency, you're not getting it.
Well, and I think we're talking in broad terms of like a contingency, but I think you would say, a budget item for engagement of outside counsel, you have a budget item.
Right.
You're budgeting for all your things, like if the mayor goes through and details a bunch of line items in the city council budget, I would suspect that the next budget cycle, the mayor's gonna have a lot of issues.
Yeah, he's gonna turn around. Thanks.
I agree with you. I think it is sound to have a contingency. That's worded the minute here. But then one of the challenges with that is forecasting. It's like, how do you know what the right amount is? And if you budget a certain contingency, then an issue comes up, you don't have enough money to address it, and you're still kind of out of luck,
We all do it at home. When I budget each year, I assume that my car's gonna break down over the course of the year and the auto repairs and maintenance. I don't know exactly what that's gonna be, but I set aside some money. It's those things that are happening in the business that businesses think about.
And you never do it perfectly, you just do your best with it.
I think.
Go ahead, Ashley, I'm gonna ask a question, try to get us around to a decision on this.
Steven, you said something? Can we interview somebody, or can we ask whoever does the budget, well, mayor, whoever, her assistant, is there something in place for contingency or not, or what? Because I'm looking at the budget, I don't know where to look to see where that would be going.
They're gonna see it for them.
there is no contingency in the city. That's what, the term city council budget is, I don't believe accurate, because it's one cost center of the whole city, and so every cost center doesn't have a contingency fund for that cost center, it varies. And it's managed by the CFO, that's why it's, I think we're making a lot of assumptions here without getting the full picture of how this really works. So I would agree that we need to get facts from somebody that is responsible for this.
What are we asking for before? Yeah.
Other than,
Maybe have the CFO come and explain the budget process as it relates
So
to,
which what was that would like to do?
city council matters and the contingent contingencies that come up over the course of the year.
Is it appropriate to ask the city council, might we have a contingency for this kind of thing?
I think this thing is saying, it's just one bucket, right? You can't line item, okay?
I think that's why it goes back to being fiscally conservative, because you don't have a contingency for each individual department. It doesn't make sense because it's one city budget. You maybe have funding that can be pulled and used from operating, and you have funding that can be pulled and used from capital. But
Why couldn't they separate the contingency budget to city council?
What's-
You're saying that.
what's it gonna be based on? Like, how do you come up with the amount?
You go look at these, I was just doing some, on my calculator, Bobby, but, when I was talking about budget, I can sit here and look at 250,000, that would buy you close to 1,000 an hour. I mean, there's, you have to sit down and look at historically, I would think, Steve, okay, has this ever occurred? And what would the need look like? Is it 100,000, is it 200,000? I don't know, I haven't been through the budget process. But it seems to be a lot better answer than trying to find a way mid-year for city council to raise their hand and say, well, I need 200 grand, I need 300 grand, and that seems to be fraught with peril, because then you've got all of these other issues you've got.
Demands.
Trying to find a solution to the problem being, what do you do in this exigent circumstance? That's the problem we're trying to fix. Something really out of the blue comes up, it's a real problem, and we all instinctively feel city council should be allowed to hire that person.
For a partial year.
For a partial year. Yeah.
Or contract.
Or contract, whatever, yes.
I was just gonna say, isn't there a sort of negotiation that occurs where, for instance, council could say, we need $100,000 for a contingency for X hours and blah, blah, blah. The mayor could say, that's a lot, how about 80,000? Isn't there a back and forth that occurs during the budget approval process?
I think that's pretty typical.
Yeah.
Some organizations will more rubber stamp and do a percentage increase, others will really do like zero-based budgeting, where they're doing a real hard look at what your plans are, what your performance has been. I don't know how the city is.
And the issue is that there have been those concerns or issues that pop up, and council goes to hire staff to take on an issue, and the mayor has not approved the funding for that extra staff. Someone said something about like
I don't think I've ever gotten that.
It's never heard that.
I think the issue is,
I don't know,
they don't have the.
but I've never heard,
They
I've
don't have
never
the
heard
money,
of
the mayor
pay
can just say,
I don't think we're gonna run this to ground tonight. Well, we could if we stayed really think, but no, what do we need to get in, I guess, is the question.
And I don't disagree with your idea, that your idea might work, what you just suggested, but I think before we propose a solution, I think it'd be helpful to at least hear the feedback from the CFO on that specific idea, because maybe there's another way of doing it, we haven't talked about it, right? Like,
Yeah, totally.
So we take that action. Is that enough to get us to the next stage, or do we also need more from? I think this would be a logical next step. Do we agree with that?
I agree.
Yeah. Okay, so let's table that. There's a second half. Yeah, there's more, right?
oh, goodness,
So-
great.
You got some subjects?
We only have like 40 minutes left. We might as well just, like, if anyone needs to pop in, but might as well push through.
I do, yeah.
If we do, I mean, we can, but it's up to you guys. I just figured.
Keep
So
going, keep
We're gonna
going.
keep
30 and 20.
Okay.
This second item was also the topic discussed earlier. It came into the part-time, full-time, it came into the public comment they're actually making. And it's really around adding a provision that, allows for salaries, because this is for the city council and the mayor. So it's not calculating, approving the room. It's basically the question.
I would roll this into asking the CFO for suggestions on how to handle this. I haven't heard anyone say that they thought that this was a terrible idea, and if we need to debate whether we move on with it at all, that's fine, but
I'm fine with asking the CFO. I would question whether it's a charter issue or not. I mean, I don't disagree that I would personally vote to pay city council members more. I just don't know why. It seems odd to set salaries.
I don't want
in
to
a
set,
charter.
yeah, I'm not
Yeah,
setting
and
this salary in the charter, but maybe there's a process or a way that I have not thought of that would address this. I think it's a valid issue. You know,
I agree.
Does anyone know how
What do we agree to, sorry, that we asked the CFO more about?
The rest of the setting up the comp for the city council members.
yeah.
So that they don't have to vote
Currently
on
and
their own
going forward,
raises.
yeah.
Yeah, I think the issue right now is two things, and they've kind of glazed over it. One is that they've currently gone without raises for a number of years theoretically, and that's why it's so low. So it's fixing that gap, but then once that gap is fixed, what do we do going forward? Like, there are two issues, and I don't know, like you said, if both of them should be addressed in the charter, but maybe one of them should. I think we should have that conversation with the CFO.
How is the mayor's salary? Does anyone know calculated?
I'll tell you this thought, I'm sorry.
No, I-
just have one thought too. Whatever we do, it's gotta go for a vote by them, then it's gotta go for a vote by the citizens. And in my opinion, putting a salary increase in any way that writes in front of the citizens who don't, when it could be handled as an administrative matter, seems like a bad idea. But again, I think we should hear from the CFO and talk about it. It could be fixed, and I understand it's not politically expedient to borrow from our other phraseology to vote on your own papers. But they're gonna have to vote on it now if we do that too. Like, we're gonna make a recommendation to the city council. They can only put it on the ballot if they vote on it, and then we're gonna be asking the citizens to consider right sizing city council.
I never envisioned we would be suggesting that on the ballot, we raise the salaries to X. I don't see that as what we're doing. I see it as the second step, Stephen. City council is gonna have to make we can recommend it. We can sit here as a group and say they're underpaid, we think they should be paid more, it's a full-time job, all of those things to give them some cover because they should be paid more. Anyone in the right mind should know that, right? But I think what we could do and put on the ballot is some type of benchmark where it's a mathematical formula. I don't see that the voters would have a problem.
Or tied to whatever the ATU gets that year.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
there's plenty of things we could do that I think would be palatable with the voters, and they would be able to vote on as a council to put on the ballot without a lot of fuss. But closing the gap is the bigger
Correct.
issue, and I think it's fair to expect that they are asking us for assistance to give them some cover to do that. It's a barrier to entry for people to run. I mean,
Yeah.
I think Ron's right, though. I mean, it is, sort of politically contentious, and who knows if whatever we put forward to them, they might say, we're not touching this thing, so.
If we put a number, they will. We can't send up to there, we think you should pay 100,000. I mean, we can talk about numbers, but not to suggest they go on the ballot. That's just,
it's got to be important.
To your point, we just have to be, I guess, careful with whatever that.
correct, however the license.
Yeah,
And so really we're seeing both.
yeah, 100%.
The formula is gonna be, somebody's gonna calculate the numbers, and that's gonna be the school, it's gonna show.
It may be, but let's get here from the CFO, let's figure out a way, because to ignore it, I think is the wrong thing.
CFO is a god of confusion. I'm gonna move to an easy one so our brains feel better.
Real quick though, does anyone know how the mayor's salary is calculated?
Section 6.06.
So it's in the.
Right. It puts it all though to occurrence of the mayor and council. So it requires a resolution or ordinance to do with the salaries.
Hard for everybody.
If we're gonna ask the CFO to come, I do think that it would be helpful if they brought some information about this. So,
You got a problem?
Can you say when you say this, can you
questions to ask.
Like historical pay increases of city council relative to the rest of the city? Is that too much to ask, or wouldn't we ask them that probably in the discussion anyway?
Yes, that's a good idea.
So like ATU, and city council, and then any other classification that.
What's ATU? I don't know.
The union, union employees. Non-union, and then
Can you phrase it for me? I wanna make sure I'm accurate here.
I think we would wanna see a historical, we request a historical record of salary increases
How far back?
for city council relative to everybody else. I don't know, going back.
So first you want just salaries go a certain far back, then you want to compare it to a piece of data, right?
What I'm looking for are the percentages, like I know during COVID, there was like a 6% or 9% more that's right there somewhere, like
Yeah,
almost off the
sorry.
top of our head, but.
It was 3% is the annual, but then
During COVID.
I think during, I'm trying to think, there was a 9% increase for fire,
666.
But not for your records, so not 6, like there.
18% over 3 years. I don't want to butt in, please, if you want to ask me a question, I'll be happy to answer. I'm sitting here watching you all do this.
Sorry,
Joe, I'd like to hear the answer. I don't have the answers, but you're talking about some things that
I thought you said.
I'll make public comments next meeting.
I would like to see an annual going back 10 years. The percentage.
That's easy.
Is that,
I want to go back further.
okay, thank you, okay.
Recession, I don't think you're allowed to say.
What are we asking for?
I got it.
Down. Hey guys, can we get to what we're asking for, and I can make it happen. But what are we asking for? Historical salaries which would show the increases by virtue of the numbers. How far back?
Since the year 2000.
You okay with that?
Yeah,
It's about like terms, so let's go way back.
Okay, so that will give us what the council members will be, we're receiving in salaries over that period, we can do percentages against that math fairly easily. Check, what's next? 1 second, Bob.
I mean, I think it's helpful to understand how that compared to the rest of the city. If that's too much information, we don't have to ask for it, but if we're gonna talk about tying it to the rest of the city, then I feel like we should know.
You mean the rest of the city, like,
Union employees, non-union employees.
their increases or what their pay was?
Their increases, not every single position, but their increases, yeah, what the annual increases were.
So I think what Rob was saying is we would just get the number from 2000 and then we would figure out from today to then, but Rob, I think what Steve is asking for is year by year increases from 2000 to present.
Yes, and
That happened every year across the board,
Stephen, I'm
it's
not
not like
trying to put
it's
words here.
more than like a page.
there's also, I know when they did the information they shared on salaries, there are some not wrinkles, but there are some aspects that have to be accounted for example, the market's gonna drive demand, someone retires and you're paying someone even more than that person did, there are lots of factors. So I just wanna make sure it's an apples
But
to
there's,
apples.
there's this cost of living.
It's the annual increase.
I'm not saying the right words, yeah, it's
You
not.
mean like the COLA type stuff, basically?
There's a COLA and then there's a cap on merit until you get to the top of the classification, so.
Right, so I mean, maybe not merit, but
That was-
COLA.
COLA, because that was frozen for a while, in my mind at least. And like the county, they gave you your cost of living, but you had to take certain unpaid days. But when you don't get your cost of living, it affects you for virtually the rest of your time in the city.
And it can be cumulative every year, does that?
So really what we're debating is, also want to be just respectful of how much work it might be. The question for us philosophically is, do we pay these city council members as part-time public service jobs, or do we pay them as employees? Because mayor's a full-time employee, the staff employees, so I think until we make that decision as a group that we want to treat them as same as employees, it could be construed as an apples to oranges comparison, right? Their salary is ridiculously low for a full-time employee's position for what they do. No private company would get people to apply. Philosophically, they're considered part-time public servants and paid commensurate to a part-time public servant job. So that's the philosophical shift I think we're making. For me, at least, I'm fine seeing the data, but if they're a part-time public servant, then the amount they get paid may be enough. If we're considering them a full-time employee and paying them a full-time employee, then we would set their salary as full-time employees.
Maybe what we can do is, instead of getting down to like every data element that possibly be, ask for this and say we're trying to get a sense for proportionality across the council salaries and increases versus part-time and or full-time. Maybe just be prepared to discuss how that compares, right? Maybe we can kind of approach it from that perspective, ask them to do that, would that be okay? Otherwise, you guys you're all free to email me specific questions, I can digest it, talk to Ken, we can package it. Just right now, I have a hard time kind of getting down, because we're not getting it like independent, while we're just gonna throw things out. Go ahead, Alan, and I want to get to that, so.
I guess to Ron's point, I think that maybe first, even if it's an informal vote, but we should really see if we have a consensus about whether city council should be a full-time or part-time job. And that at least will be instructive in terms of the questions we're asking.
They get benefits too?
Don't know what cities council does, I know that they do.
We get help,
County.
we get help.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I know I would go to the.
Sorry, I interrupted, sorry.
I said, I know I was gonna jokingly say, I know I would go to the serving on the charter review commission, should be considered a full-time job.
Life insurance.
Going back to Alan's point, I think you're just trying to kind of gauge the group, the group scaling. And there are implications that we won't get into here, but show of hands, who feels that the council positions should be considered full-time?
I'm not a no, I just would like to understand more.
I'll just make a note of it. Now we're going to be.
And if they get bumped to full-time, that just means they're gonna get paid more.
Well,
I don't know the implications.
Yeah,
The salary,
I
the
think
rate stays the same and they're getting paid for those hours, or
I think it's a full-time job, just to clarify what my vote yes was. I think it's a full-time job. Does that mean that they, I don't know what these numbers are. But that's all I'm saying. They're working full-time hours.
Right.
Like, so are a lot of people in this industry.
I wrote full-time, need to learn more, I think that covers it, can we go to this now?
Can I have one more for the CFO?
What?
Can I add one more question for the CFO?
Can you ask questions of the?
Can I add one more to the
Yes.
CFO question list? How is it, I see it's the salary of the mayor is voted on, but how do they get to that number to vote on? So can we ask that?
For the mayor?
Yeah,
Proposes the mayor's
yeah,
salary.
who proposes the salary and then obviously it's been the budget to vote on.
I'm really sorry.
But it doesn't say in there like they must work.
Salary, something their salaries, everybody, is that what you're getting at? Another question for the CFO? No, okay, can I shift to this? You guys okay with that?
That's a question for Ken.
Go ahead.
Does it say anywhere in the charter how many, if the city council positions are full-time or part-time, or give any indication of what the level of work expectation is?
No, it's how it's been interpreted over time.
Yeah.
I thought it used to say that, but I can't find any change where it was taken out, so I guess it's within legend.
If we're making a discussion about that,
Yeah, I think it's a question for the CFO, like how is it classified? I don't think. Should it be full-time? I think it is already full-time, that's what the chair said.
Right.
That's,
I think there was something there.
but if we're gonna make a recommendation that has anything to do with salary, I don't know how we can make that without clarifying in the charter whether or not the position is intended to be full-time or part-time.
correct, yeah.
I, regardless of how you see it, it's like, there are these key assumptions and people are like, well, the charter's never said that. That's a big deal.
I mean, maybe the other question is, and maybe we could do this individually, is looked at comps from other similar sized cities in terms of, whether they consider their city council full-time, part-time, and how much they get paid for it? Because the answer to that would justify or not justify other things.
Or if it's like,
Maybe.
if they're,
Maybe, but then wouldn't you have to look at the roles of that body of government?
Sorry, that's exactly.
Yeah, you know, it's, you have to
You
dig.
need your assumptions.
You're gonna see across the board, and there are plenty of city councils that are voluntary completely. You're gonna see though, whether or not it is a strong council form of government, that the mayor is part of council, appointed position, something like that. You'll see what.
In cities like some.
Then it's how you define, on population numbers, you're only gonna have a few cities around the state.
Very few. And if you look at some of the larger cities that are larger than we are, like Chicago and New York, it's a strong mayor form of city government. On the books, it's very legislative, but actually they're extremely administrative in what they do. They basically run the administration for their ward. They have 50 wards, and their numbers are way lower proportionally than I think even we are for our city council members, even though they're like huge cities, but they're responsible for like day-to-day ward administrative operations. I'm sorry, I didn't say that one openly, but there's a lot of important factors, and there isn't just cost of living for the city and on there. It's hard,
I mean, the last thing I'll say is just, I think there's consensus from what I can tell in the group that it is a full-time job, so to speak. It probably should pay more. The challenge I see is the language, whatever language that we come up with. I think that is what we should probably dial in on, is how that's sent to council and then ultimately to the voters.
And I think, I'll try to put my own pin in this, I think it's probably true that paying more might change the caliber of representations, but that's not a guarantee either.
True.
Right, that's not a if then, it's probably if sometimes. So if we back into that as a problem statement, I think that's an important consideration. You might even argue that all those extra hours are a reflection of how much the current council members care and work, and this is from, this is a monetary gig.
Right.
This is a given heart. So I think that's another factor that might be under consideration.
That is a great first.
Since we're on a roll, again, happy feelings, let's look at Ken's great work. We removed the word found because, and this was your comment, Ron, I think you'll agree, it wasn't very charter-esque. I'm sorry it's small, but I want to show the whole piece. So instead of found, such positions must be allocated within the city council's budget as opposed to found. And is that an okay change? I think so, but you have to confirm.
Yes.
Agree with that?
Thank you, Ken.
Okay, yeah, thanks, Ed.
Beautiful work.
I found that lawyer work. I think I could.
So let's
So
make
that's
it
where we
more
are.
complicated.
We have, let me go back here, we will end on time, promise. But just to give us a sense of what's in front of us. There might even be one more. There is. I'm just making an executive choice to go again to the next changes we made. We're looking at language, so you knock those off. And this one I actually, by reading it, I realized there were two parts. So, and I'll show this to you in just a second. One was around including, and this is around how ordinances are read, et cetera, et cetera. So Title 2 days, et cetera. So we wanted to update the language to include pursuant to state law or similar, so that this requirement follows the states in case the state language is modernized. And I think what you did here, Ken, I wanted to show it so you can explain it. Now that I'm looking at it, you showed some changes that are about that. So maybe can I show that to the group here, and then you can explain it. This is again a reflection simply of the delay. So here, what we have here is, I'll summarize it. Acceptance provided, proposed ordinance pursuant to the requirements of general law. When 2 readings are required, ordinances shall be read only by title on 2 separate days. unless 3 members vote in the affirmative to require the final reading of the ordinance be read in full, the yeas and nays shall be taken. I think there you just made it read that, right? It was similar to that, but can you explain?
Yeah, this is general law today. So that was the first clarification. If general law changes, then you could have this ability right now to do readings in a different way. General law also allows the council to have this provision as far as speeding along, that you don't have to do full reading. So it was simply a cleanup to match more directly as to what general law says at the moment. So it's
Very artful.
it's just trying to nail it down to your concern about general.
Are we good with the change?
Yes.
Your stuff is really going well.
Great job.
Like 15 words.
Right, about a full-time job.
I believe that is the final charter update, which allows us to move beyond that. So I'd like to scan this for any other answers we've gotten, not engage in any conversation, we're tired. Talk about how many sections we have left and how much that we have left to do, and then we can adjourn. I'm presuming there's no new business or maybe insightful thing, but if there is, we can come for that.
I've had new business for the past 2 or 3 meetings, and we always just like get up and leave. We can't really-
Well, then we'll give you a chance. I don't want that.
I'm late.
I'll be here alone. Okay, I'll say it to no one.
Now, previously discussed.
Get it to him in advance.
Okay, so this is just, this is more for you if you haven't had a chance to go look at what we received. In some cases, you know, as the chairman said, there's more reading to do. But without going into the questions, this topic, I think this is mayoral, 4.01. We talked about the biking citation piece, we got a memo from the mayor, I think we've run that to ground. Regarding what mid-budget year salary changes, beyond COLA and merit adjustments, there's a link here that'll take you directly to the analysis. I did read it before we met. It really requires you to read it to digest what that looks like. I'm not gonna cite numbers because I'll be off by memory. And then there's another piece of information regarding what the procurement policy requires the mayor to disclose any conflicts of interest. That's all out there for you to see. We also had questions about the meeting of administrative. The city attorney met with Ken and me to ask more about the context. And we started with a summary in case you need more. You can read it, I won't read all the words, but he did provide some specific language around what we mean by administrative. Again, this is a symptom of time and having elapsed, and us reminding ourselves why we needed it. But we got an answer and checked it off. That's not something for the group. That might be the last thing. I just want to confirm, but I want to point you to. We also got a response around timeframes for sharing audit reports. Essentially, my interpretation of it is that it's only an internal audit department policy, one. If it is an audit report with no recommendations attached to it, there's a 10-day window in which the director of that department is expected to share it. If there are recommendations, it's a 40-day window, which would be the longest amount of time before releasing that recommendation. 40 days elapses, the director of the department can opt to share, regardless of whether or not the mayor has done what he or she needs to do. So the full response is linked here for you guys. And that may be just about it. This is all, you guys have this and some of you are looking at it, so you can find this too. You will amend it with this. We will come back to where we just ended. Hopefully the CFO can come next time, so we don't lose, we don't have to move ahead and move back again. But this is all out there. So that's the first point. Easy for you to find that stuff. Let me do this one slide, then we'll get to the business body for you. Not for you, I mean, So admittedly, some of these should be dull and expeditious, right? But the fact of the matter is we still have articles 6 through 11 we haven't touched those. We haven't touched those. And today, intentionally, I didn't want to. I want to go back to where we were since we got a lot of answers. We have 9 meetings with the presumption of ending August. We may have one, again, word of the day contingency meeting in September, but I'd rather just focus on ending August. That's already further than maybe someone said, oh. Honestly, I think if we can get through all the way up to 5, I think these will go a lot faster. Most will go faster, not all. But I just bring this to your attention. I'm not really commenting on it. It's just a fact. We have those to go through. Again, I think some of these are gonna be, they're gonna be more formality, just go through and say yes. And we did that with some others, but I just wanted you to be aware of it, so that we can set expectations. And now we will raise any new business and Bobby, please.
Yeah, item for new business, we're starting to see things coalesce a little bit more at this point, with language and our discussions, I think. To a point where we're getting close to decision making. We had a motion from Ron in the beginning on how the votes would go. And the way you worded your motion was to amend what the chair had given us. The chair said basically no, that document was not amended. So your motion ended up kind of in a procedural cul-de-sac where, in my interpretation of it, it didn't really get, it kind of just got stuck.
Sorry, refresh my memory a little bit more, what,
It's on the 5, 4, 6,
On the-
3.
Exactly, yeah, on what vote level we would need to pass
yeah,
amendment language. So you're supposed to
yeah.
modify the resolution, he said no, and that kind of leaves us without a proper procedure.
Well, they said, and we'll defer to Ken on this, but the city council said no, but they said no because it's in the ordinance that they passed and the resolution that they passed, that it would be by majority vote, I think. if I remember correctly.
So that's where it ended.
That's where it ended.
Okay, just want to be sure, as we're moving along, we don't get to some point where.
Yeah.
Okay,
Right.
that's it, that's all.
Oh, really?
That's it.
No, you made a whole page.
See, that was good, you guys thinking you're gonna just.
We want to make sure the loose ends are tied up, that's the business.
So there we go.
All right.
Okay, well, thank you. We made progress, but we have more to make, I guess. We'll follow up on the CFO, take a look at what's been given to us.
Yeah.
If you haven't, I do want to thank Scott Steady for his support. He's really been trying in his work to get us everything we need as soon as possible. And thanks again for the updates right now. Our changes to the charter are approved, they're minor, but at least we can put those behind us. And let's dig in and really try to plow. I'd like to get into section 6 next time, so set your minds accordingly. That's all I have. I think we're ready for adjournment, Chair.
Deputy President meeting at 8:48. Do I have? What was it?
Second.
Second, sorry. From second, any discussion? Okay, all, for, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. The ayes have it, this meeting is adjourned at 8:49.
Thank you, everyone. Safe travels.
Thank you. Kathy, what you were crazy. Oh, thank you.
That one was pretty good.
I don't know.
It depends on the host.
He is on us. That's what I was thinking. It's like, I don't know what we're talking about. Like,
So if I didn't even notice. I didn't even notice
You can still walk up to the city's house, we know what he's talking about, but she was